Hello, uglies, and welcome to a very special recap of the finale of season 6 of the Boulet Brothers Dragula. I'm your host, Beth Dixon, and I am so excited to be discussing what an incredible season we just watched and kind of go back to what are the thoughts we had in the very beginning of the season after only a couple episodes had aired and see if our predictions for the season made sense. Now, I'm saying a lot of we and our, but I'm not alone here on reality TV wrap-ups. I am joined by an incredible drag queen, a patron, and just the best person for all things drag that I could be talking to. That's right, I'm talking to Sugar Free with its incredible jacket that she's made. Sugar Free, how are you doing?
I love drag.
Yes, bitch.
I love drag.
Ew.
Look at her.
Look at her. Get into it. Look
So,
at how hot that is.
so I didn't make this, but I have a tattoo of a gummy bear with a syringe, and the company I work at, Ruby Key, which is an up-and-coming drag house, they were like, "Hey, do you want a punk rock trash polka gummy bear look?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I do."
I'm sorry. Who would say no?
Who would say no?
I don't mean that as like it's not a special thing for you. I just mean like we should all be saying yes to these kinds of things.
Absolutely. If you're offered a trash polka look head to toe, take it. Take it, children.
Listen, you only live one life. And let's be honest, if you take a look at me with my very basic sense of style, with I will put a hoodie on with jeans, you know what I could use? I could use some like trash punk, like makeover someday. And honestly, honest to God, I think that's going to be one of my 2025 goals, Sugar Free. I don't know if it's just Dragula. I love it so much, but I love some punk music, but I look absolutely not like somebody who is punk. And so there's a part of me that's like, you know what? In 2025, I want to say fuck you to the system and I want to look punk even for one night, you know?
Absolutely. It's something that, like, my personality is quite bubbly and silly and neurotic, and something about putting on black, white, and red just really takes you there. It's like I can be an idiot, but also the hottest bitch in the room. And
Absolutely.
very fun.
You can
Counter
be.
drag.
We know a lot of really hot idiots. And I would imagine that we actually, on all of the shows that we cover, are covering a lot of hot idiots on, especially Hot Dummies on Island. Shout out to Kirsten and Scally and Sasha and all the other fun people over there. But today we are here to actually talk about the probably most punk show that RHAP covers. We're going to be talking about Dragula.
Do we cover Below Deck though?
Oh, that is true. We do cover Below Deck. A fair shout out.
I've never watched Below Deck in my life.
Oh God, I have not also watched it, but I know it is. I think it's a show I would like, but that's a whole other thing. So today what we're going to focus on is, if you all remember from the first podcast about Dragula this season, we tried to tackle the question, is season 6 going to be the best season of all time? And we judged it off of the first 2 episodes, which we both argued were very strong and very, very promising. Today, after we recap the entirety of the finale, we'll also talk about some of our favorite moments from the season, things that maybe we didn't discuss in the first couple of episodes, anything else that we want to bring up. We'll end by talking about who we want to see on this cast in a future Titans season. And then we're going to end by answering if we think this was the best season of all time. Does that sound like a plan, Sugar Free?
It's not.
I was going to just call you Sugar. Then I was like, I have to add the free, Beth.
It's my first name. You're
okay. So, Miss Free, are you okay with?
I'm excited. Good plan, sexy plan. Let's be hot and talk about drag.
I love it. So let's be hot and talk about the top. Well, you know what? I just realized I got to change the slide all the way back to the beginning. All right. I did make a slideshow with Sugar Free and my own like opinions on the top looks and such later that we will discuss. But first, we're going to be discussing all of the finale looks from Dragula. Now, first of all, let's also address the fact that, yes, we're like a week and a half late recording this, and we can put 100% of the blame on me. So I apologize for a lot of scheduling issues to get this going. And I also didn't get to watch the finale for a couple of days until after it aired. And my goodness, Sugar Free, what did you think about all of the looks this finale? Were you impressed with the season 6 finalists?
I was definitely impressed with the season 6 finalists. Even if I didn't like fully love a look, I could always at least appreciate everything that went into it. But there was also looks that were so good that my brain exploded for a little bit.
I 1,000% agree with you. This has been, in my opinion, one of the most diverse and interesting finales in terms of every look, but also with each drag monster having just this incredible sense of who they are in each category. And sometimes I feel like some of the finalists lose themselves in a category, or or the outfit eats them, or the performance doesn't live up to whatever. And I don't think I felt like that with any of the performances for this finale. I
Mhm.
felt like, especially the floor show, the performance itself, how they utilized what they were looking like, the character they were embodying, while also having an aspect of themselves. I think this was probably my favorite finale in terms of the monsters being able to do that.
It
Which
is
is
it's in my top 3 for sure. I would
Mhm.
put this 2 and 1 finales in my like top 3.
Yeah, so for me, I was gonna say this, 2, and 4.
See, I respect that, but
Yeah.
also Melissa Be Fierce. And that's all I'm going to say about the
And
season 1 finale.
that's all you need to say. And the best part about that, considering Melissa B. Fierce doesn't win, it just shows you how good Vander is,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Seriously. And remember in the season 1 finale after the floor show, the Boulets get together for their final meeting and they just go, "Oh, Melissa was so good." They
I
had like an
know.
existential crisis being like, she objectively probably did better than Vander. What do we do? What do we do?
It's very fascinating because can we just take a second to talk about this, because I love that the Boulets have a moment every episode now where they talk about what their thoughts are, and then it turns the attention when the monsters are on stage to having the guest judges really lead the feedback, the constructive feedback, the positive glowing, and then they add to that. And it's great to see that consistency about excuse me, some of the things that they're going to say. And sometimes they talk about monsters who are not actually going to be on the stage if it's earlier in the season. So it's nice to hear what their thought process is. It would be so interesting if, like, Drag Race, for example, whoever the host is, like, in most obviously in the US, like if RuPaul, Michelle, and whoever, Carson or whatever, were the main people that provided feedback, or if it was literally just RuPaul and Michelle, and then they brought out, like, okay, it's either Carson or T.S. Madison or Ross or whatever, and this guest judge. Now we can hear what they all have to say. I don't know. I think it's because RuPaul's Drag Race is so about RuPaul that it's almost like they want to keep that someone like somewhat like RuPaul doesn't like give away a lot of, that's part of the mystique of RuPaul or whatever. But even though
Mhm.
everything is about RuPaul, I think it's just fascinating when you compare it to the Boulet brothers Dragula. And while things are very focused on them, the focus is not on them.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I think the Boulets are smart that they recognize where their place is in their own show.
Yes.
And they're very aware that they are not just the hosts of it, they are also the showrunners and the directors.
Yeah.
And they are also married. And I think
Yes.
that dynamic is just why those little one-on-ones between the two are so important. It's just like watching the parents talk about their children for a little bit. And I think that with Rue and Michelle, it would almost read as, I don't want to say inauthentic, but it wouldn't feel as personal as it is with the
Yeah.
Boulets when they do it.
I do think that in the earlier seasons it would have, when obviously Michelle joined in season 3, but I do think that, like, having those moments to kind of really showcase the friendship that Michelle and RuPaul have, when they had What's the Tea, their podcast, that's where it was really fun to listen. I loved listening to when they had queens from Drag Race come be a guest on those podcasts, because it was the first time you really got to understand that while this is a guest and they're interviewing them, it's really about the dynamic RuPaul and Michelle have, which is a lot of fun. And it also does a couple of things. Number one, it legitimized Michelle having a place on a judges panel, because I think a lot of people would look at a straight woman who is judging drag and say, where just because you're friends with RuPaul, but then you get to understand a lot of her background of, being a part of the ball scene and moving to New York and wanting to be around, the queer people, the people who were, marginalized in other identities, and really integrated herself there. And while RuPaul was having this like punk turned drag turned, queer party icon in New York City, to catching the attention of people for modeling and acting, those kind of things, and having this other path. And so seeing those two come together, I think is a lot of fun. But like you said, when you have the married dynamic of the Boulet brothers, which I know throws a lot of people off, they are not really brothers.
No, sorry, y'all.
I think I think this is my interpretation of it. I know it's supposed to be shocking when you find out that they're married. That's literally what their whole art is that it's shocking. But the brothers portion is a play on gendered words, number one. And number two, they always look exactly the same. So they're supposed to look like twins. Like, why, so they're not trying to say that they're like incestual. You know what I mean? So I understand that's where a lot of people go to. But anyway, I love the very candid comments that they have. And I just generally think that they did such a good job this season translating some of the things that they were feeling. Like, hey, in the past, we've been really good about giving somebody a second chance because we feel like they're going to grow. And I loved having a little bit more cutthroat from them and being like, no, like, you messed up, you go home. And I think I liked that more this season than any other season.
I agree. And I feel like it didn't actually like truly disrupt like some sort of pecking order that we would think of. I think it played out the way it probably should have, but it did feel like the stakes were higher, and it felt like truly like when Auntie messed up in that one challenge, it felt like it really could be her depending on how the cards played out.
Exactly. And that's what I want. That's what I expect from a show like Dragula, that's going to push you to your limits in multiple ways. I didn't like, and I didn't felt like it matches the aesthetic to be like, we're going to let somebody move forward that just because we like them and we know that they're not necessarily growing in a way that, is entertaining for the audience or whatever. I like that they could take the producer's hat, the host hat, and say, I think that we need to be a little tougher on them. And I love it, because the toughness doesn't have to come from extermination challenges or fright feats. It can come from, here's feedback. You're amazing as you are, but this is a competition and all these other people did better than you.
Mm-hmm. This is the competition. You're a pilgrim and you're holding a chicken. You're going to be punished.
You're going to be punished. Flying chickens in the cauldron alone. Let's skip forward again to the finale and to get into these looks. So you mentioned Auntie Heroine messing up in the challenge, but let's talk about these looks. Overall, what were your thoughts on Auntie Heroine's package for, in the order that we have on the screen from left to right? We have her horror look, this kind of, alien horror, creature. And then you have this incredible glam look, stoned, I think. That's hard to tell sometimes on camera. Like, are those stones? Are they sequin? I think it's both.
I think it's both. I think the bodysuit is stoned and the overdress is the sequin. But I think it's so I think there's stones on the outer dress as well. But
that's right. And then the last look we have on the far right is their filth look. And what I like the most, I'll just say this before I let you get going. What I like the most about Auntie is that Auntie has very specific paint style that can be, as we can see here, glamorous, creepy, horrifying, like just absolutely interesting to look at. It's dynamic and it's in your face. And I think it's pretty incredible when you can see three very different styles, three very different characters, but have similar paint styles and structures on the face. So give me your thoughts.
I just think the Powerpuff Girls look so good here. Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. Well, I'm sorry, everybody, but I accidentally murdered Beth. It's what happens when you see a color palette and you just
I
go
am
for
so
it.
sorry.
Go for the joke.
That made me laugh so hard. I pressed my button on my mouse by accident, and I left the studio, and with it also left the slideshow. So I have to bring that back. I'm so sorry.
We are not cutting any of that.
No,
No.
that is not staying in. I want everybody to know that the Powerpuff Girls made me leave so badly because I was taking a sip and I thought I was going to spit it all over the place or come out through my nose. So my apologies. Tell me about the Powerpuff Girls.
Okay, so let's talk about Auntie as like a character in this season, as a package this season first. I feel like when Auntie started the season, I truly thought that they could do no wrong. Like after the first 2 episodes, even episodes 3 and 4, I was like, oh my gosh, you could really be the one that takes down Asia, because Asia was the front runner from the beginning.
Yeah.
We get to this finale package. I'm going to be 100% honest. This is probably my least favorite of the 3 packages. And I'll talk about it. Let's talk about Blossom first, the horror look.
Yes, let's talk about the horror look.
I think that it is well made. I like the prosthetics. I just don't find it scary. And I think that the horror category is tricky because you have to present something that makes sense. You can't just black out your face and go, I'm creepy monster.
Yeah.
But I do think this leaned into campy a little bit too much without one extra horror element. Like it would have been awesome if maybe if the brain exploded on stage.
I thought that's what was going to happen. I'm so happy you said that. I was going to say that. I literally thought the part of what she was doing was having the same really intense, scary face and acting robotically. And I won't lie, the performance itself is horrifying. It's creepy. I'm not going to have nightmares when I go to sleep about it. But if I were in some kind of haunted attraction and that came at me, I'd be creeped out for a moment. I agree with you that there needed to be something more horrifying, even if it was campy on top of it. Like the brain explode. It's like she's so intense that it just explodes or something. Like that would have been incredible.
Yeah. And I think that's really what held the horror look back. And also I think that the color palette was very comic booky. And I don't think that comic booky reads as horror necessarily. I think it can, but in this instance, it just wasn't enough for what the category asked for me.
I tend to agree with you. I'm going to say this for both Auntie's horror look and glam look, is that there's something weird with the crotch area of the catsuit that is really distracting to me. It reminds me if I am wearing, tights or stockings and I can't get the crotch area to come all the way up to my crotch and just kind of has a weird U there that makes me feel like a Ken doll in a weird way. That's what I'm getting here. I love this idea and I love how different it is. I loved Auntie's performance, but I do think one thing that has held me back from being completely in Auntie's corner this entire season, and especially in this, is that even though her performance is really good every time, it's very repetitive. So I couldn't believe that she won the Jack in the Box because it was just the same thing the entire time. As amazing as the movement was, as captivating and enthralled I was with it all, it just didn't seem like it's kind of one note, right? And this for me felt very one note, and I felt like every category ended up feeling mostly one note, except for one thing. I'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I think Auntie has done something, and I know that Pie would have done the same thing, which is inherently very hard in this show. I would argue it's hard in Drag Race, and the easiest competition show for it would be Camp Wanakiki, which is camp, camp, camp. It is so hard when camp is such an important part of queer culture, drag. It's this intersection of things that make everybody laugh, the satirical, over the top, when you're in the UK, this panto kind of feel to things. but then how do you harness it in a way that is providing, you know, everything that you're supposed to do in the brief, not providing, but like fulfilling all the things like in the brief. And I think that Auntie was like 85% of the way there here. And I
Totally
really,
agree.
really, really want to commend, because I really appreciated her saying, hey, I know what I have to offer is very different from what these two other finalists are going to have. One is literally a haunt actor and works in special effects. And, you know, the other one has just like this incredibly, you know, beautiful, dark, and creative, you know, sense of drag. And not that Auntie doesn't, but if you look at everything Auntie did, there was always a hint or more than a hint of camp to it. And I just think that for a horror, it had to have something big and over the top that happened. Otherwise, it's just a camp look with you looking one way, and that's it.
And I don't mind camp in the horror look. Like
No, not at all.
I think of Bitch Puddin's Horror, how it was that body yaddy yaddy Elvira dress with like the red beady eyes. That is camp still. I would argue that that is in itself camp.
Yep.
But it was grounded in scary. And I think that this was more grounded in sci-fi than necessarily scary.
I also wonder to what extent they either know or have any say in what the lighting is going to be. Because I do think that, as we will see, I'm pretty sure all of the horror was mostly red lighting. All of the filth was green. All of the glam was more purple blue, like we're seeing here. I think that was the case for when the lights were fully up on them. Because I just don't think that with red lighting, this is as effective. Because
it brings out the pink tones and the purple.
It brings out the pink too much. And if you knew that ahead of time, I do think that that's where you have to say, I have to have something. There needs to be an apex, a part of my performance where something happens so that this is elevated. So the brain explodes is what we're using right now. It would have been amazing if there could have been some kind of hookup that's like, you start off and, you know, the lights are low and that kind of thing. And as this alien creature sees you, it's like a bull that gets more angry. And as they get angry, things explode off of them. And then like the whole point is that maybe they regenerate them or whatever. You kind of think of like Resident Evil, like bad guys or whatever, that sometimes like you could be shooting the crap out of them and it takes like 50,000, you know, hits in like this one part of their body or whatever, then explodes. But sometimes they just regenerate. And not that I'm saying she had to come up with how to regenerate things on stage, but I'm saying that's where my brain would have gone, right? So if she has like her brain explode, maybe one of her boobs explodes, like one of those kind of things, as the more angry she gets, I think that that would have just brought the camp to a horror level that gave her a little bit more levels in her look and performance.
Or she could have had one fake arm like Grey Matter did with her monochromatic look. One arm's behind their back, and then like the arm falls out and there's blood seeping out. Yeah.
And make the blood campy. Make it that make it like that gooey green or purple or something like that. Like that's fine. But I just kind of felt a little disappointed comparatively. That said, I just think that Auntie has one of the best understandings of physicality and facial expressions of any drag artist we've ever seen on this show or Drag Race. I genuinely cannot wait to see what they do, and I would love to go to an Auntie Heroine show. With that in mind, let's move to the glamour look.
Yes.
This to me is my favorite makeup of Auntie Heroines for the entire season. Ooh. This, I think it's because I'm a sucker for blue as well, but there's, and it's also because I hate comparing drag artists, and I'm so sorry. I know I did this exact comparison.
As long as you always preface it with "I hate doing this," but then it's usually fine.
No, I hate doing the comparison, but I guess I'm saying that I'm a big fan of like Axel Andrews's very like the nose.
I absolutely see the Axel in this. Absolutely.
This is you know, that style of paint beat drag is very. It's like hyper masculine, but with like a hint of like David Bowieism in it, where like it's the most masculine kind of makeup because it's angles and straight lines. And yes, of course, there's buffering out and blending and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't appear like that. It's very striking. In the eye makeup in particular, with this look, the like little drips underneath the eye of white that are blended out with like a black and everything, and then
Mhm.
also having the corner of the eye come down so severely with a severe nose contour, the contour on the cheeks, everything having this blue, and then the contacts having kind of a like lack of iris. There's some white in there. I don't know. It just came across as very like, I would be so creeped out. Like if I woke up out of a dream and this is the person I saw there, I would feel like this is a leader of some place that I need to appease. And the scariest thing this person would do is not say anything. And they just look at you.
And Auntie
And I
would.
and I love well, I think Auntie would speak to you. I think we've learned that Auntie will talk. On stage, maybe not so much. But I think that this aura that she was able to do from the face and the headpiece and everything was really great. I thought the outfit itself, the structure of it looked incredible. I loved the beading and the sequin and all that kind of stuff. Really wish she hadn't done a reveal. The reveal was so anticlimactic and it took away any of the glamour that she had, and it just went
Mhm.
away. And I don't know. I felt like the level of detail and intricacy in the face is not brought anywhere else on the outfit, especially once she takes away the overcoat area. But
We're
what are your
pretty much
thoughts?
we're in alignment for this. It's very Liberace to me. I really
Ooh,
she
yeah.
said Vegas, and I definitely
Mhm.
see the Vegas inspiration. It's not that I prefer one look over the other. It's complicated. I
Sure.
think that the first silhouette, I remember watching this and I was like, she needs more of a waist. Where's the waist? And then
Yes.
she took off the overdress and then the body was perfect in the catsuit. And I was like, oh, there's the waist. But
Yeah.
that's a problem if your overdress doesn't give you the right silhouette, because all I was thinking was, I don't like how this looks. Oh, you took it off. Your body looks better, but now I'm missing all of the glamour that was in the overdress in the first place. So it's like, I I'm
Yeah.
so conflicted on it. I completely agree. Neck up, it's pretty much perfect, but it just
Mhm.
was just some tweaks to really push it over the top. I don't even mind a reveal into a bodysuit for glamour. Yes, it's glamour. Show off your
Sure.
body. But the bodysuit needs to be a little bit more interesting, or the overdress needs to stay on and be a perfect fit.
Agreed 1,000%. And I want to say, I think that Auntie took the hard road most of the time with this finale and throughout the season. I think this is
Agreed.
generally, I think that Auntie is somebody who's like, I'm going to really challenge myself and I'm still going to be very true to who I am as a drag artist and who I am as a person and my thoughts. But I want to make sure that I'm really pushing myself. And I feel like this is an example, all three of these looks are them pushing themselves. But I do agree. I just think like the cat suit just I was like, cool, it's a beautiful, stoned cat suit. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. And it looks beautiful on her. But again, it's not caught here. If you look at the crotch, it's a little too low and it creates that kind of view. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just little things that even though she had a waist here, the crotch was distracting for me. And if there's not going to be anything else that happens, but I just want to, I guess the main thing I was trying to get to before my ADHD took over is just how I love when glamour is about masculine makeup and glamour in that
Mm-hmm.
category. Like with Landon or here, like just those aspects when you get to say it is glamorous to be masculine as well. That is something that we don't hear a lot. And even, women in the queer community, in women and the queer community, also women in the queer community. But I think we all have this idea that we're like, yes, we want men to be able to express themselves and be able to celebrate femininity. But there are ways to be masculine that appear feminine because you're using makeup or whatever. That is very, very powerful and should be celebrated. And I think we're just in a time in a world where we kind of think like, oh, masculinity is bad, and so therefore we shouldn't celebrate it. That is absolutely false. What we shouldn't
Mhm.
celebrate is thinking that masculinity is inherently better than femininity and should be ruling the way, and that you shouldn't be experiencing anything else besides masculinity. This is an example for me and such a commentary, especially for somebody who is non-binary, to kind of come out and say, I can be both and I am both, and fuck anybody who thinks differently. And I think that that's, for me, the most powerful thing about Auntie's drag in this finale.
They definitely have that spirit of, I am beating my own drum. You don't have to listen, but I'm going to make you hear it. Sorry about it.
Exactly. I love it. No
Mhm.
sorry about it at all, Auntie. But let's finish off Auntie's looks with the filth category, even though this was the first category that got put on the slide. As you can tell, I did the slideshow with no order.
So what's crazy to me is if you took off the tapeworm at the bottom of it, I actually think that this whole head to toe look is more glamorous than her glamour look.
Thank you. I've been saying that. I've been saying that to me because I only talk to me about Dragula. But and I was going to talk to you about it, but I was like, well, damn it, we're going to do a podcast, so I can't talk to Sugar Free about it yet.
It's
So
been so hard, y'all. We almost talked once during episode 4, and we were just like, no, we need to save this.
we're like, poor Sugar Free has literally been like, oh my god, what did you think of the episode? Like as it just came out, and I'm like, I have to work. I haven't watched it yet, and so there have been days where Sugar would like message me and be like, no like official thoughts or anything, but like, what are you feeling after this episode? Are you feeling good about the season? I'm like, I haven't watched it. So poor Sugar Free is sitting there, and I'm just like, not even giving her a crumb. But I agree with you. I long thought that I thought before I knew that this was the filth category, because this is who they showed first. I was like, oh, this is glamour. And then they said filth. And I was like, oh.
Oh.
But I agree with that assessment. But what are your other thoughts on it? Did you like the performance? Did you understand that was a tapeworm at first coming out of her
No,
dress? Okay.
I did not understand it was a tapeworm at first. I thought it was a very strange choice because you're a tapeworm, but there's mealworms in the cake you're eating.
Yeah.
So you could have just been a mealworm, but it's very clearly a tapeworm tail. So again, it's just like not all of the elements are making the tastiest stew together, even though all of the individual ingredients work really well.
Yeah.
It's like, but what is the meal? Because right now it looks like a chocolate cake filled with mealworms, and I don't want to eat that. I will commend the act of filth. Obviously, the act of filth was great. I love the presentation of the pastries, and I really did think that this gown was I like wearing a glamorous look during filth as a concept. It really works for me, the juxtaposition. But I was left with questions, and I don't want to be left with questions. I don't think filth is the place to like try to reinvent the wheel. Just make it super obvious and gross and own it 100%, and you're probably going to be sold.
What I loved about this was the performance. I love the look and I like the idea of it, but the performance to me was one of the most visceral of the finale, because this was really about how filthy body dysmorphia and all these ideas that we have to do to maintain a certain level of appearance, how filthy that is at its core. And it's horrific and that kind of thing too. It's so funny because I really feel like their performance in this last, or like in filth, was a combination of all three tenets. There's a very glamorous look to it. It's horrifying that this person feels like they have to do this, and it's filthy that they freaking enjoy it. They don't mind that they have this tapeworm that allows them to maintain this figure and be glamorous. They love that they're just like, it's a commentary on binge eating, or just anything that you just allow yourself to do and enjoy, even though like you're not supposed to, or it's not healthy to, or whatever. Like, that's what I think of with filth. It's people enjoying and doing things that they aren't supposed to, right? From speak. So for her, it wasn't just, oh, I'm binge eating. It's, I'm binge eating because I also love mealworms, and this tie to what I eat might also help me with what I lose, and like all this stuff, like worm in the mouth, worm out the ass. Like I don't know, like I just thought the performance in itself, I could really feel her at first be like, I really shouldn't, I really can't, oh no, but I have to. And then just enjoying it. Like that to me, I thought was the best performance of Filth generally. And we'll get to other things. And I think that's a hot take, relatively hot take.
Actually, the more you're selling me on this, the actual performance of it outside of the look, I'm getting sold on you because you're right. I
Yeah.
didn't really think about the binge eating aspect of what they were
Yeah.
doing. I was just surface level worms, and that's about as far as I got in my silly little brain.
No, and I think for me personally, as somebody who has been dealing with, trying to transition to better eating habits and such, and trying not to do so within diet culture, it's very top of mind for me to be sitting here and say like, oh, I can so identify that there will be days where I do really well, and then I'm like, fuck it, I just want to like binge. I want to have I want a candy, and I want this, and I want a pizza, and I like whatever. And in the moment, you're like, fuck it all. And then the next day, you're like, I'm so gross. Right.
Hmm.
And so I just really identified with that, and I could catch that immediately. But I just honestly think that the performance was really, really high level in like the message. And I just thought it was incredible. That said, I felt like the look itself was more glamorous, like you said, than the glamour look. All right. Shall we move on to, spoiler alert, the winner of Dragula season 6, Asia Consent, which I need to tell you, I love Asia. And I love what I got to see from Asia this season.
Same.
I really hate the name Asia Consent. It makes
Well,
me uncomfortable.
well, you don't know her last drag name?
Oh no, what was her last drag name?
So, and I found this out recently. I was a Tumblr girly, and I had
Mm.
seen Erica Clash years ago on Tumblr's Drag Race before they showed up on Dragula. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know Asia Consent was on the same cycle of Tumblr's Drag Race against Erica Clash under the name Hermaphrodite.
Oh, okay. So
So their names are always going to be taboo as heck.
oh yeah, and you know what? That's the show for it. I don't think Drag Race is going to allow anybody named Asia Consent to come on. And
No.
I understand the whole point of that is very much to be punk in your face and fuck you, right? Like, and to make you think and to make you uncomfortable and reflect on why are you uncomfortable. And they're not saying anything with their name. They're not saying I like to fuck people when they turn at the age of consent or anything like that. So like it's important to sit back and like I did and say, "Ooh, what is it about that I don't know if I like?" And I was like, "Well, I don't think I like it because I hate that we even have to have this idea of an age of consent. I mean, we have to, but I mean like I hate the idea that there are people who want to have sex with people who are so
Yes.
young. And I also hate when there's an age gap, even though it's not that much of an age gap, with people who are in their early 20s still dating like 18 or 19-year-olds. I don't know why, but that makes me very uncomfortable. Like if you're 20 and you're dating a 19-year-old, whatever. But if you're like 24 dating an 18-year-old, I'm really questioning you because
Yeah.
you're inherently at such a big different step. And you are helping to inform that person in the first stages of them being more independent in their life. And I just feel like that's inherently a sort of grooming in a way. And so Asia Consent's name made me go through all of this reflection for that. But I think that that's what I think is really powerful. And then to have this incredible talent on top of it. Boy, what a
Mhm.
fascinating person and performer.
I think that it does help when they own their name, when they
Oh,
say
yeah.
Asia like the consent because it's mandatory. And it's like without that, I feel like
Oh, yeah.
it is an owning of the joke and a reminder that, like, yeah, it's a silly name, but also this is very real. So don't fuck with me.
When I saw 50 Shades of Grey with my friends in 2015 in the movie theater, and it was all of us women, we were all sitting, and there's this scene where she's like signing a contract or whatever with him. And I could hear people being like, who the fuck does that? And my friend literally in the middle of the theater was like, consent is sexy, people. Like, because she's like, this is their way of getting consent. They're writing it down, whole 9 yards. And, all this. And I was like, you know what? Fair point. But moving on to consent, I give you my consent to tell me all of your thoughts about Asia for this season and her finale altogether before we start talking about each look individually.
So Asia Consent, the character and the player this season. I really Frontrunners are a tricky thing with reality competition shows because it's either you're obsessed with the frontrunner and you're so happy, or there's other people that you really enjoy too, and you don't want it to be a steamroll. You want it to be a tight race.
Yeah.
Asia was someone that I was more in that half with, but always in the back of my head, I told myself, yeah, but Asia loves this show. And I don't really feel that energy from everyone else to the extent that Asia does. I personally would have maybe chosen, based off aesthetics alone, a different winner. However, this takes me back to Bitch Pudding's win, season 2, and how it's like, yeah, Victoria's package for the finale was probably technically a stronger package. However, Bitch's spirit through that package and through that season is what got them that win. And that's why it's important that Bitch won. And I think that's why it's still important that Asia won. Asia needed to be rewarded for the spirit of Dragula that is channeled through her goddamn blood.
I so agree with you on that. I think, when I think about the season 2 finale, all 3 of them were absolutely incredible. And I loved aspects of all 3 of them.
I think it is the strongest finale of any of them is season 2.
I could be convinced to change my mind from this season back to season 2, because season 2 for me is just the gold standard of Dragula in so many ways. And it's also a kind of like at its gritty beginning to a certain extent too. I don't know. There's just so much I love about Dragula season 2. But all of that said, I felt like what you're saying is so important, that Dragula, as much as it is a reality competition show that has judges that are going to have subjective opinions, because that's what any kind of judging is going to be, having somebody who fully embodies the alternative punk, horror, filth, glamour spirit, in addition to bringing it on the stage and bringing it in their looks and just exuding it in every opportunity, is what it should be. This isn't the next drag superstar as told by RuPaul, which has we all know now, almost 17 seasons in, we know exactly who RuPaul's going to like and who they aren't going to like. That, those are things that we all know, and it's kind of tainted our thoughts of what defines good drag or whatever. What I loved about Asia is I think Asia had some of the best concepts and execution of styles and performances. And I do think that there were times where I think the competition was like unfairly helping her a little bit, which, I felt like the one where it was like the Dragula trivia, they gave her all the easy questions and she's supposed to be the Dragula like person. I just feel like that should have been, I don't know, a little bit more balanced or something.
I will only argue that Asia still correctly answered all of the questions, even when it wasn't their turn. So, it wouldn't have mattered. It just wouldn't have mattered.
No. It's so true. But I'm just saying, that's an example where I was looking at it and as an audience member going, seems like she got an easy question there. But some other people had hard ones that she could answer. So she was going to win regardless. I felt like there were times where she got praised for something that I felt like other people should be praised more. But that said, I was never upset at an Asia performance or look, ever.
The only time was when she could not fire a bow and arrow, a weapon she chose. And that's literally it for me.
That to me was so, even though it wasn't intentional, that was such high camp that I fucking loved it. I was dying laughing. I was like, thank God. Because I feel like in the D&D challenges, when they have them, you got to have a moment of comedy a little bit. Because D&D and fantasy and all that stuff, even if you watch something like Lord of the Rings, they have one-liners. That, Gimli's going to say something or whatever, and you're going to have a little chuckle. I love that, we don't know what her stats are, right? She could
Mhm.
have like the worst agility in the world and the worst strength or whatever, but she's still a tiefling. Like, you know what I mean? Just like
Uh,
she's the spawn of the devil, but she can't fire a bow and
But
arrow.
she
Like
got a 0 in dexterity.
that's what it is. See, I don't know anything about the classes. By the way, if anybody has suggestions of ways to get involved with D&D, I think I would love it. And I've never gotten into it. And I think, anyway, that's just a side note. Put
Can we just
comments.
like get a rap campaign going? Is that possible?
Okay, you heard it here first on Dragula. If we get a rap D&D campaign going, that's amazing. So I'm
If I'm
literally
not
going to look into it.
invited, if I'm not invited, I
Sugar
respect
free,
it,
you
but I'll
can't.
be upset.
Sugar free can't. Sugar free can't join. They no, just kidding. Could you imagine if I was like, "Oh my god, such a great idea," then turned around and was like, "And then fuck sugar free, we're just gonna do
this
it."
this campaign's gonna be sugar free, okay?
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be sugar free. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh,
no. Um, as a side note, even though we're getting really distracted, what is your favorite? Like, have you done a lot of D&D?
I've done some D&D. Yeah, yeah. I
What
usually
is your
play as like an elf ranger. Like I love a
okay?
bow and arrow. I love having like an animal companion, someone that like can like
Yes.
do shenanigans with me. I played as a street urchin bard once who had like a little pet
Ooh.
rat, and like my pet rat was able to like do things for me.
I love that. I think that that's so
Have you
smart.
never played D&D ever?
So I've done 2 sessions once, and then I
Okay,
left the
okay. So,
campaign because I was the only person who wasn't in person. So people were trying to have me in, and it made it very difficult for someone who had never played, and we were playing
sure.
with a first-time DM. But what I came up with for a character was uh an elf bard, and I was basically told I had to be a bard because they're like, "Beth, it's so you have to be a bard." And I was like, "Okay, whatever."
And
Um
bards are really versatile, so you can do a
yes.
lot as a bard.
And so my thought had always been, and like, I've always been obsessed with elves. I think elves are so cool. I've always loved the elf race when I watch, even though I know that they have a lot of, self-righteousness and can be prejudicial and that kind of thing. I kind of thought that that would be funny from a bard perspective. And so I was trying to be like, I would love to be able to like cast spells with my songs or something. Like, I think that'd be
I
kind of
love
cool.
that.
So anyway,
Well,
so that's my
speaking of
background.
bards, let's sing our praises for.
Oh, lovely. That deserves a Thorpe. That was a good one. So let's
I'll
sing our
take it.
praises to Sugar Free. I can't even let you go first. I have to tell you straight up.
Do it.
Asia's horror performance was so powerful to me. And it was
Mhm.
horror in the sense that I wasn't scared. It was horror in the sense that I could identify. It was horror in the
Absolutely.
sense that this is real life for so many people. And it's not this, oh, what if a stranger follows you? Oh, what if you end up in some weird torture porn dungeon with this person? What if you were in an alternate universe where this creature existed? Blah, 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 blah. This to me, head to toe look incredible. The performance literally almost made me cry because I was also, I mean, I think it's not, if anybody's been following me on social media, I've been going through it. I've been a little depressed. Oh, that's not even a word, but I've been a little depressified is what I meant to say. I just been having a little low moment. So when I watched this, I was like, that's literally what it feels like. It literally feels like this dark energy is right here and won't allow me a break, and it was so powerful to me, and I loved the way that her makeup made her look like a sad clown mime of sorts, with like almost like this East Asian influence in it that I thought was interesting.
Mhm.
I loved, it's almost reminds me of like a little doll as well. Like this, I don't know, like I just thought it was really powerful, a really unique way to look at the horror you know, category. Thank you. My God, I was coming up with nothing there. And
Mhm.
I think this was so powerful, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I fully agree. And I'm not going to touch too much on the message because I think you covered it. But the idea of horror as a horrifying thing versus a feeling, both are very valid, and this
Yeah.
was a feeling personified. The wig, this wig is, first of
So
all,
cool.
expertly made. Whoever made that,
Mhm.
kudos. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But the idea that this demon that is behind Asia is doing this to her physically, it translates so much into what she is feeling emotionally as well. I think that the whole
Yeah.
performance was just incredibly intelligent, and I'm
So smart.
this is the pinnacle of Dracula for me, is being able to do this. Yeah.
I so agree. And the thing that I like the most is that you see these moments like in the bottom right photo of the horror, you see her trying to be herself and trying to be upright and trying and trying and trying, but it just keeps bringing her down. And then she's writing and she can't write and she's doing these things and it's just so visceral and it was so powerful. I just 10 out of 10. I really like what Gray did, and we'll talk about that. But I have to say, I think this for me was likely the best performance of the night of all the finale looks. For me personally, it's a very
It,
hard thing to say that, but
it's literally such a toss up between the two. But
it is. It is
in terms of thematic power, Asia wins by a mile.
1,000%. But let's talk about her glamour look because I know. So, originally, as a spoiler alert, we came up with what we thought our favorite 3 looks were for the season. And then I said, you know what? Let's exclude the finale looks because we're going to be already covering them.
Mm.
Sugar Free, you had this as one of your top 3 looks of the season. So, I got to go right to you.
Ooh, 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 ooh. This is, again, smart drag artist.
Yeah.
Recognizing the texture of these jagged bones and these spider details are similar and finding a way to combine them. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my God, Asia consent. And so a little tiny criticism I've had of Asia for most of the season was her eye makeup.
Yeah.
She changed it once for the monochromatic challenge, but for the most part, it's been the same liner shape, the same triangle eyeshadow, the same lash. So for Asia to come out in this glamour with this brand new cut crease on, literally, I was just like, that's all I needed. All
Thank
I
you.
needed from you. Thank you. And I mean, and she did the same eye for the monochromatic challenge in her horror look as well. Also, I love that eye. She puts
So good.
wrinkles in her cut crease. It's like, how much more Dragula can you get?
It's
I just
incredible.
This is absolutely like a the main character in a video game, like the main horror villain in a video game, in a movie. I could see it. I can't stop looking at it. It's just perfect.
This to me, I've never seen something like that. And it kind of reminded me like we always call, the parts of the corset boning, like that like keeps everything straight, like the corset itself. And I liked that this was almost like a tongue in cheek kind of boning, like,
Totally.
creating my shape through bones. And I've had this like if I could say that Asia reminds me of any creature, it's always going to be a Black Widow spider. So I loved that you had like this spider in bones, like she's literally glammed up of her victim's bones. Like she is ethereal and glamorous. And I love the way she loves herself on stage. It's so beautiful to watch, even when it's horrifying. And I think this is the power of so many people who do drag, number one, but especially for those that are trans or non binary or any other, non cis identity, is that there is such a power in being authentically in love with yourself and doing that in a world where everybody is telling you that you shouldn't because they don't is so powerful. And I think that's what makes Asia like even better of an artist is because the most Dragula thing she could do is literally go, fuck you. Look at how fucking beautiful I am from head to toe. I'm damn sexy. I'm scary. I'm creative. I'm smart. I'm all these things. And you can't take any of that away from me. And that's what I just kind of felt like was completely embodied in this glamour look.
I completely agree. There's not much more to say. It's just
No.
perfect, smart, genius, sexy, hot adjectives.
And I will just say in general, and we can move over to the filth look for this too, is that she's really smart in how she uses her tattoos as a part of her drag as well.
Totally.
And like, you know, she has like these fake skeleton bone rib cage tattoos that are actually not just that. I think they're supposed to be almost like wings or something. I can't get a good look, but I feel like, you know, there have been so many times. It took me a little while. I'm a little dumb. There were times where I was like, wow, she really likes doing those skeleton bones on her chest, like the rib cage. And then I was like, oh nope, that is just literally her tattoos. Um, but we see it with the filth look, and I think it works for both her filth and glamour look, or having those tattoos. The filth performance for me, and this is obviously gross, like you're take
Hmm.
somebody who's like really getting into the toilet and everything, but I kind of felt like it was a safe finale thing when
I
it comes to filth.
fully agree with you. It felt like, all right, I'll do the poop look with the poop dress, and I'll have poop in the toilet, and it's just poop, 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 poop.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the same sense of, when you talked about Auntie and like the relishing in it, I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily fully get Asia relishing in her poop. It wasn't like she was like, oh, I'm so happy I'm eating this poop from this toilet. This is the
That
best day of
was
my
very
life.
disastering of you. That's what that voice reminded me
I'm
of.
eating this poop from the toilet and I love it.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, no, that's how I felt. And I just kind of I kind of wish that instead of, because I get it, like I kind of feel like with season 6 we're beyond just enjoying poop, if that makes sense. Like I don't know.
Totally.
And not that I'm sitting here saying that there was incredibly groundbreaking stuff back in season 2, but I will tell you, bitch pudding,
Yep.
eating the hair and all that kind of stuff from like that
Sucking on her toes.
that haunts me to this day because I didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And because bitch was basically just that weird looking human that we've all seen someplace, but then they're also gross. And so all of these preconceptions that we have of somebody who might look like that because we have beauty privilege in this in our world, it was like an absolute commentary on that. And it's just one of those things, right? Here it's just I'm a person who has a poop dress and I like poop. And it
And I
doesn't build anywhere. Like it doesn't do anything for me. So
look,
I
I
just
came out of a butt.
well, I would have loved if it was somebody who like I don't know how she would have done this, but it's almost like I would have loved for her to like gradually build the poop up on her look, like smear it and become poop with it.
Yes.
That is different than already because I couldn't tell if she was actually supposed to be shit or if she was supposed to be like I'm not even gonna lie. At first, I was like, "Is she some kind of fungus, or is she some kind of like disease, or something that you get from that?" And then when she started rolling around, it was like, I just felt like the performance was kind of one note in general. And then when she got into the toilet and such, I was like, oh, she's okay. You are what you eat, kind of thing. Got you. But I definitely, I mean, I think the aesthetic, I think the look looks cool. I just
Yeah.
think it would have been cooler if the performance went somewhere other than now I'm just eating it.
I love that we're having a very critical analysis on how to play around with poop on
Yes.
stage. I think it's
Yes.
important conversations to have.
It
But
is,
I
you know?
I agree with you with like the smearing of poop on her body would be very satisfying. It's almost like the poop was hidden from us in a strange
I
way.
hope RHAP out of context attacks the crap out of this podcast. I have give you all full permission. You need to have the phrase, I wish you would have smeared poop on her as well. Or whatever. Like there's a lot you're gonna be able to say here.
Ah! Because it's true.
It is.
Oh.
I would have to say, I think this was a shit performance.
I almost said it earlier, then I forgot to. Oh.
But truly, I do think that she did really, really well in this finale. It's just that this, in comparison to her other two looks, didn't feel as fully realized as the other two.
It's funny. For number 2, it sure was one note.
All right, now we have to get the runs over to Gray Matter.
Oh,
All right, now for those of you at home, we are about to have an incredible conversation. If you haven't been enjoying the last hour as it is, Sugar Free, I think, is probably Gray Matter's like number one fan, especially coming out of this finale. I love Gray Matter as well, and really interested in how, they were able to kind of make this hunt actor leap into a more drag oriented show. And this finale to me is the epitome of everything Gray Matter is, and I
absolutely.
loved it. What are your thoughts, Sugar Free? I have to get over to you.
Gray Matter. Our daddy Gray, our sweet man. He just, the ideas that he has and the way that he knows how to execute them. I would argue if Victoria Elizabeth Black is mother, then Gray Matter is father, no
Bow
matter
down to
what.
the parents.
Bow down to the parents of special effects. I just think that Gray's win this season would have been a signal to the idea of drag not having to be one box or the other. It can
Mm-hmm.
truly be a sandbox where you can play around with any flavor you want to that day. And I think everyone gets that, but I think Gray's win would have really like pushed that forward. I think that this
Yeah.
package is, it's really hard to argue away from this package being my favorite floor show finale ever. Like, and this, I think it really
Yeah.
is.
I do think that when it comes to nailing all three categories, Gray, in my opinion, is the one who did it the best.
Yeah.
I felt like, as we just discussed, I think that Asia kind of faltered a little bit in filth, and I think that Auntie faltered the most with horror and a little bit with glamour. Here, I struggled to find things that I dislike about Gray
Mhm.
and his drag. And I think the thing about a Gray win and over somebody like Asia that I don't know if this is at all a part of the thought process. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the Boulets or other people are thinking as well. Is that I do think that there is a certain extent of this of if we crown yet another person who does special effects stuff, what does that say to the drag alternative artists who are really doing it on their own without a lot of knowledge or skill sets in this way that still have incredibly valid Dragula drag? And I don't know if that's necessarily a reason to not crown Gray. I do think that Gray, in terms of a character on the season, was a little flat.
Yeah.
Wasn't the most exciting. Asia was exciting and both in on and off of the stage. And I kind of felt like, and this is no dig at Gray. I just think that he's not as he's not somebody that we saw like this incredible growth or whatever. He was just always going to be a threat. And so people put him in the bottom. He didn't really have personal issues with too many people. And if they did, it was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to show him I'm better because he can back it up. Because he has
Mhm.
those skills and he has access to things that maybe other people don't. So I don't want to take that away from him because I think that's important. But similarly, like if every winner of Dragula, not every, but if many winners of Dragula were of the Victoria Elizabeth Black, Dolly to a certain extent, Nihoro to a certain extent, Gray Matter kind of thing, it does kind of take away from what the roots of what Dragula was, which is supposed to be like where Drag Race has moved to a place where everybody has to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in order to get on the show and like have like all these pristinely incredible looks when like 10 years ago mall drag was a thing. I don't know. Like, I just feel like, I think that Dragula is trying to be very conscious of not falling into this whole mainstream thing of what
Mhm.
horror looks like, mainstream of what filth looks like, and those kind of things, which is weird to say because horror is always on the outskirts. Filth is definitely not mainstream. Glamour is. And I think that that's one of those things that this show will always have to come up against, and why someone like Gray is always going to have to just, the stars are going to have to align, or they're always going to have to come back and win a Titans. Like, that's like just my assessment.
If I could give Gray any advice, if they do come back for Titans, like I pray they do, it would be to learn how to own your own storyline as you're being filmed. Because I feel
Mm.
like Asia knew how to do that.
Oh yeah.
Auntie did too. Pi, I would
Mhm.
argue, did. Jaharia, for
Mhm.
the most part, did. But it
Mhm.
felt like Gray was a passive player in their own narrative.
And I would say even Yuri did, but Yuri was just passive in how she was even approaching it. So, but that made for a more interesting storyline to follow her,
Totally.
you know? So I think that that's a really good piece of advice. And the other thing I would say is that I hope to see more looks without as many masks, not because I don't like his masks and the things he creates are like incredible, but because this goblin look that is kind of like a throwback to, what was it, the first episode, the
The
second
entrance,
episode,
yeah.
the entrance look, like that to me was such a growth. And I think that there were some people who were like, is this drag or is it just person with mask and outfit that is like special effects, right? And I think that having one or two more looks where you can prove how good of a makeup artist you are and how you can do these things a little bit more amplified would be great. Now, I'm not saying get rid of masks altogether. That's clearly Gray's thing. But I'm just saying in
Mhm.
general, I think that more of that connection would, in the way that they kind of said that about, wear some heels or drag it up a little bit, play with gender a little more.
Mhm.
That is where I saw, what his main storyline was in the middle of this season. Um,
I do think for this, let's start with the horror, but I do think that
yeah.
there are little things that they did in this full finale package to really bring the drag out.
Oh,
So
agreed.
this horror, I'm just gonna say at the top, they are wearing heels and they're wearing nails. So that is
Yes, they
enough.
are.
That's enough for me to pay, especially with everything else going on in this horror. This is probably in my opinion, the scariest thing that I have seen on the show. Like the literal scariest
Yes.
look. Oh my god, they start with chains that leave the stage that are like holding him up. He has two head reveals, makes his head look it's like 5 inches tall almost, and has like multiple chest parts that are just bursting out. It's what I in my backstory with horror is I hated horror so much as a kid
Yeah.
growing up. Despised it, horrified, scary, scary, scary. Loved Drag Race, and all of a sudden, Dragula episode 1, season 1 is on YouTube. And Dragula has actually helped me understand the art behind horror.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think that Grey's is it's something that I could not have watched 8 years ago, and now I was just staring, eyes wide open, like, what else is gonna happen? Oh, he has
Yeah.
3 heads. Oh my gosh, and it's just, I felt like a dude, bro, watching a football game. I was like, go, 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 get it great.
I think Gray's horror look to me uh is so smart for multiple, like there's many different layers, and I mean that figuratively obviously and literally. There are lots of influences here that are classic horror and some that are classic drag, and I think that's what makes this the smartest kind of thing that he could have done ever for this last look. You start off with a leather face, essentially, right? This is somebody else's skin that's been put together as a mask while he has those chains. So then you're also getting Cinnabite, Hellraiser
Mm-hmm.
kind of vibe. So you have two horror things right there. They just had a Dead by Daylight challenge, which I cannot wait to talk about because it up until like a couple years ago, that's the only game I played for like 5 years.
Dang. Okay.
I
I cannot wait to hear what you think because I've never played it.
love Dead by Daylight. I just got to a place with it where I was getting frustrated and I couldn't play it anymore because of all the changes they were making. But other than that, so anyway, so you have this idea. He looks and he kind of acts a little bit like Pinhead in not the movies, but in Dead by Daylight, which is what's funny. Then you bring in the drag aspects, the nails, the heels. How about burlesque? Peeling
Mm-hmm.
the skin, peeling this head off. Like those are so smart to do performance wise because they hearken to the things that are what a lot of drag artists rely on. They rely on burlesque, they rely on, a reveal, they rely on these kind of things, but do all the things that make drag and drag race and all those other things that people think about let's take it to the next degree. And now I thought the only thing he could have done better is if it actually peeled off and if there was another layer inside or something and then just blood came out. The fact that he's enjoying that too is very
Mm-hmm.
Cenobite and everything there too. And the last thing it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if people have watched Hostel 1 and 2 or not. Um, the premise of Hostel was back, in the mid 2000s when those movies came out. Eli Roth, who boo is a well, whatever. Um, Eli had this idea that when you're in Europe, if you're checking into a hotel or a hostel, they always take your passport and scan it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was this idea that rich people from all over the world at this, if people were checking into this one hostel, they essentially could bid on the person. And then once they won the bid and bought them, these people unknowingly would be captured and brought to a torture place. And these people could do whatever they wanted to them and then kill them. And so that was the whole idea of it. So you have rich people who are just like, for fun, I choose that person and now I can live out my sickest fantasy of what I want to do to somebody. I don't know why, because it's actually nothing to do with it. But when he started opening up his chest, there's a part in the second movie where the first person who gets kidnapped ends up being hung with the chains above a woman who's naked in a bathtub, and she has a scythe and she's like slowly like opening her up so that the blood gets on her, and then she just bathes and writhes in the blood. And he kind of reminded me of both aspects of that, where you have the girl who's being cut up and tortured, and then you have the other person who's just so enjoying it, like, yes, give me your blood and such. That was the vibe he was giving me. Like, I love this even though it's hurting me and I don't care. Like, it's so great. Like, there was that vibe. And I just thought to myself, this is sick in all the words that sick can mean, all the ways of it. So
Mm-hmm. Sick, sickness, sickening.
absolutely. Let's move on to the glamour look, which I loved.
Oh, this glamour look! It's like so hard to argue with Grey Lucy when Grey presented stuff like this. I actually think that Gray Matter is the most overall, full package wise, probably the most fashionable person in this cast.
Mm,
I would argue. Like, think about their killer doll look. Think about their entrance look. Think about the monochromatic look with that Moschino jacket that Violet pointed
yeah.
out. I think that, and especially this, the foxtail capelet moment that is like trailing this, just all the negative space that it like allows to like truly see the silhouette behind with oh my gosh, I'm not even like smart enough to talk about how good it is how I feel right now. I'm looking at this, I'm like, I need a fashion degree to fully point out everything that's perfect about this, because there's just so much. There's just so much.
I like to think of it this way. If you removed his head and the like little skull portion here at the very top, the like, like bones or whatever, and put it on any person who is more of a glamour person on Drag Race, that would have been a top. Like, I could see Sasha Velour wear that. You know what I mean?
I could see Marmalade from this last season of Drag Race UK wearing this.
Excuse me. I didn't watch that one, but I'm going to take your word for it. And I just think that like I could see some of these pageant queens or somebody who's trying to like make a Vegas statement or something. Like, I could see people who normally show more body coming out in something like this. It's incredibly glamorous. It is over the top. It is incredibly beautiful. And the thing I love the most about it is because Gray has said, and now let's put the goblin back on. The way I
Mm-hmm.
came into this, look at how beautiful I am. And when the entire season, as we've been discussing, has been kind of like, I don't know if they're drag enough. Well, bitch, they're drag enough now. Look at this. I just thought this was so smart and so incredible. And in my opinion, as much as I loved Asia's, this was the best glamour for me.
It was.
Hands down. Hands down. I kind of feel like Asia wins horror just because I like identified so much with the message and it really deeply got me. But Gray, it's such a different horror that I have a hard time being like, And then Gray was second. Like, I kind of want both of them to share that one.
It's
Gray for me
because
wins
yes.
this. And we'll get to filth in a second, but then I kind of felt like Auntie for me won filth purely because of the performance and not because of the look. But
Mhm.
I don't know. What are your like any other thoughts on this look and oh, that was the thing. The performance of this
Yes.
was amazing because it's not a performance I expected Gray to give. You come out on stage and it's like I made it. I'm finally singing at the opera. I'm finally who I'm look at me. Look at all I've been able to do. And it had this very like reflective and also awe-inspiring. It's like you're watching somebody reach their goals. And that is hard to do in a floor show about horror or filth. And it's much easier to do during glamour. But I feel like people normally come out as look at me rather than look at me. Look at
Yeah.
what I've done. And that's what he gave. And it was incredible to me.
I hate to say the phrase, but it was giving very mindful, very demure.
It
It just
was.
was. And it's so good because of it. I fully agree with you. And that's what I was feeling too. It just felt like not a victory lap. It felt like I've arrived. It felt like
Yes.
it felt like the actual start of a coronation almost is how I felt.
It wasn't about other people looking at him. It was about him embracing a moment versus Asia or Auntie was about other people looking at them and the validation of, yeah, I know I look good, but you take a look at me. This came out and said, bitch, I'm glamorous for me. I'm glamorous
Mm.
for my goals. I'm glamorous because I did that shit and I made it. And that to me was really, really fun to see because that's normally not what you see when you see glamour.
Mm-hmm.
It was glamour for him, which I loved.
All right. Speaking of glamour for him,
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
So we have a pig goblin troll man
Daddy.
daddy the milkman, I guess we'll say.
Let's just call him the milkman.
The
Yeah.
milkman. Yeah. This, you know what he looks like? His the mask looks like what are they called? Bokens and Zelda. The like the
Totally.
you know, I've been trying to come up with that for days and try to figure out like what does he look like? But that's what he looks like. He looks like the easy bad guys that you face in either Tears of the Kingdom or
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild. Thank you. I thought I loved the commentary. As we get ahead of time, we hear that this is really about the the dairy and the meat industry in general, and how it's true. Regardless of what your dietary preferences and such are, it is important to be looking at like the aspects of the dairy and meat industries that impact our world, what it looks like on how we treat animals and such. And even if I'm not vegan or anything like that, but I have an understanding of the severe impacts it makes. So taking a concept like that and then applying it on a very literal level of like, I don't know, like the cow enjoying his own milk kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This like also being a cow, but also being a man. I don't know, like the whole concept of it was a really good, like it was confusing in a way that I didn't want to make sense of it because it was gross. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, just watching it, I sometimes with a Dragula floor show, my initial just like enjoyment of it is just, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like how I felt with a lot of Gray's packages as they unveiled themselves. So it was like having the coat come off, and it was like, oh, you got like a like a body titty moment, and then your crotch is the udders, and it's like,
Yep.
yes, I love that too. And now you're in a tub of milk to sport. I can't get the image of Gray Matter just going "Rah, rah, 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 rah."
But then he did it with the milk.
Is so funny. I was cracking up, and I was also like, "This is really gross." I also love
I
like
have to imagine he smelled really bad.
awful. And then
I'm sure they showered, but still.
Are you?
That's
Are
a
you
lot of
sure?
milk. That's a lot of milk.
Um, But I also love that they were very smart with how they presented this. Notice the
Mm-hmm.
leather armbands that are
Mm-hmm.
used to like hide the lines where the silicone bodysuit ends. Scylla, thinking that the boulets aren't going to clock your breastplate.
Right.
Amateur. No, I'm kidding. But I just think that Gray really understood how to present this in such a way where it looked polished, campy, gross, weird. It just
Yeah.
hit a lot of different Dragula boxes I want hit.
The one thing I don't like about the look is that is two of the three looks that end up with this kind of like, actually, I think even the skull of the first one end up having like this kind of like boning skull thing in the very middle. And I don't know if that was, I'm sure it was done intentionally to be like, look at a through line. I have something that is on all three of my looks at the end. But
Wait, are you talking about their signature thing?
so I don't remember them doing it that often or at all. They do it every time.
Every time.
Oh, then never mind. I'm just talking out of
on
my
the
ass here.
the Dead by Daylight challenge. It was even on their little staff guy, the little like exposed.
You know
frame.
what? I knew it was on this the Seder look, but I didn't know. That's why I was like, oh, they're really channeling it because it's like the last two episodes. They have 4 looks doing it. I really don't think I ever clocked it before because there was so much else going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I never mind then. I take back what I was going to say because if that's a signature thing, just like Auntie's makeup is in that kind of way, like whatever, that's fine. I thought it was just kind of like, oh, all of a sudden he's doing this, and I was like, I don't know, like, but it is. I don't know. I felt like this was just so weird, and I enjoyed it because it was weird.
It's gonna be a package that I remember. I'm gonna be honest. There's some finale packages that I'm like, I remember maybe one of your looks, or maybe 2, or maybe like the energy, but I don't remember necessarily the full thing. How could I forget Gray Matter's package? I just don't think I ever will.
I no, and I think that that's the thing that I think is gonna hopefully bring him back someday. Is that I don't think there's many looks of his. Apparently, I'm wrong. Well, what am I saying? I'm just talking out of my ass. I was gonna say I don't think there's many looks of his that are forgettable, except for the fact I apparently didn't know that.
You forgot his signature. His signature exposed skull.
You know what? As much as we like to pretend that I'm very hyper focused on stuff, I'm very also inattentive. So yay, ADHD.
Well, also most of this season was like, it's a game, alliance, game. So
yeah, it was just a lot.
Yeah.
So we're going to now talk about the crowning looks, as we've mentioned already. Obviously, Asia Consent is going to win, so we'll talk about her last. But let's talk about the other 2 looks and our impressions of it, because I'm going to tell you 100% that I felt like this Auntie Heroine look was kind of disappointing in comparison to other people's. I felt like this is an entrance look that you make into a competition.
It almost reminded me of Katniss's fire dress from the Hunger Games.
That's a good comparison. Yeah, for sure.
Like not exactly the same look, but the idea of like a fire dress. That's as far as I got from it. And I was like, okay.
And I'll tell you what, like, I love big cleavage being shown, and I love with a mohawk and like a beard, mustache kind of makeup look and all that kind of stuff. I'm here for that. Yeah. I love that.
Hot.
If she had been covered in blood because she had been crowned at that moment, I think it would have looked amazing to see the blood come off the tits and off the beard. Like, I don't know. I just think that there's stuff there that's really cool. But for me, I did feel like comparative to the other 2 looks, I felt like this was lacking. Yeah. I love Auntie Heroine, and I thought that they were just incredible throughout the show. I just felt like stumbled in comparison to the other 2 here. Any other thoughts on Auntie's look before we move to Gray's, which I'm sure you have thoughts on?
I have so many thoughts on Gray's look. I don't really have that many more on Auntie's, but I think that Auntie's the kind of artist who is very self-aware and could go back and watch this show and be like, okay, these are the box I ticked well. These are the boxes I should tick better next time. I think that Auntie is a threat on a future season.
1,000%. I thought Auntie was a threat in this season, to be honest with you.
Same. I really thought that this would play out differently, but it felt like after Dragula the musical, there was a stumble in Auntie.
We'll talk about that. So let's move to Gray Matter. I want to hear your thoughts on Gray Matter.
Yes. Speaking of threats on a future season, oh my God. You know that the Boulets had another moment during this where they're like, we got to crown Asia, but also look at everything Gray did today. Look at everything Gray did today. This who are you, Gray Matter? What are you doing? I don't even have real compliments. I just have questions. Who are you? This is too good. It's too good.
You know what this reminds me of? A Dragula gray matter interpretation of Evie Oddly's crowning look.
Oh, I get that vibe for
And
sure.
it's you have it's not the same thing by any means, but just this idea of like you have like it has like almost like almost I don't know, like an ancient Egyptian or even kind of like an Indian sun kind of
Hmm.
element to it, that doesn't look like it's attached to him. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it looks like like photoshopped this character from whatever media it is, and you had to take the sun with it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like to me, that looks so cool, and it looks also a little bit harkens a little bit to like medieval royalty with like the big, you know, capes and
Totally.
collars and all that kind of stuff. But then is also like a glamorous mummy. I don't know. I looked at this and I thought to myself, "Oh, they're going to crown Gray." Because
Literally.
that's what I thought. I was like, I came into this episode going, I think it's going to be Asia. After the floor show, I went, "Ooh, I think it's going to be Asia, but it could be Gray." When I saw the crowning work, I went, "Oh, I think they're going to crown Gray." This to me is incredible.
It's fucking phenomenal. It's just it looks like the mummy statue or whatever it was in the tomb that the adventurers just invaded, and it looks like the statue just came to life and is literally going to trap them in another dimension for the next
Yes.
50 years. And I
This
believe
is
every minute.
Mummy 6 or whatever, because like I don't count any Mummy movie after the second one,
Come on,
but
Mummy Six. Let's get okay.
I feel very similar to the Mummy that I do Home Alone, which is that anything after 2 doesn't count.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
So for me, Gray could be this, like if we redid the Mummy but made it super gay, which by the way, if you go back and watch it, that's a fucking gay movie. But anyway, if you made it like flamboyantly gay and like with drag and all that kind of shit, I want Gray Matter as the mummy creature.
Make
That's
it
what I want.
happen. Make it happen, Hollywood.
Wild Presents, get together with like, I don't know, Lionsgate or something. Lionsgate would be like
Satan.
the least one. Oh man. Okay, so we have to talk about our reigning super monster, Asia Consent, in her
Ooh.
finale look. What are your thoughts?
I think it is a very fun, striking look. I think it's quite appropriate for a crowning look. Love the hair, love the poof of it all. It has that juxtaposition of very glamorous silhouette and ideas, but the color story and the details bring it to that horror moment. So it's not the problem is Gray's look is so next level, and this one isn't necessarily next level. It's just a high level.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can be like, wow, Asia looked bad. It's just like I'm objectively looking at the screen and then just panning right back over to Gray every 5 seconds. So it's just hard.
It's hard too because again, lighting wise, with both Auntie and Asia having red, Gray is just going to stand out so much more because they're also in front of a red curtain with red lighting. And so it kind of washes out some of those great details of Asia's dress and with Auntie's ensemble as well. I I'm confused about whether or not I really like this look, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I really like it, and then I have moments where I go, well, I don't know if I would be crowned in this. It's like when it's not like this at all, but it's kind of like when Trixie was crowned in the weird lip sync like
The yellow.
robe rather than the poodle wig and wonderful black gown, right? This feels a little bit like, oh, I'm going to be covered in blood, so I'm going to have something that looks like it has intestines on it because then that'll look cool for like a horror and a filth perspective. The head, the makeup, the hair, everything reminds me a lot of like, the alternative goth punk people like at the next echelon. Like this isn't somebody who
Mm-hmm.
just shops at Hot Topic in 2004, right? Like this is somebody who is like living and breathing it and is like really, really into it. So I get all of those moments. I love again that it shows off her tattoos in such a way. I love the sleeve poofs. That is the most glamorous part for me. But you really get a mixing of different aesthetics, which I think is both effective and also confusing, which is what makes me not understand the look. But I also know that I take things more literally. So that is a me problem, not a her problem. So, but regardless, I'm thrilled that Asia won this season.
It's deserved. It just
It's
is.
deserved. This final three was incredible, and that's what we have there. So before we move on, I forgot what the next one is. I think it's our top three looks are what we're going to talk about for the season, and then I want to just throw out some categories. We won't have our slideshow anymore. So let's talk about, before we got together, I asked Sugar Free to send me some looks, third, second, and first that were not finale looks that she liked.
Mhm. And I
And the
asked first. I asked, "Is it bad if I just put 3 different gray looks up?" And Beth said, "Probably." So I said, "Okay."
I said, I don't know. I think it's fun to highlight other people as well, but you do whatever. Like, I honestly, at the end of the day, if those are your top three looks, those are your top three looks, and we're
But
going to talk about those things too. So
obviously, 2 of those looks were in the finale
yeah,
floor show,
that is
so I
fair.
was I was able to pick some other looks. So I am on the left here. My third place look for the whole season is Pie's Killer Doll. This crazy over the top scaled rag doll with the giant pin needle, all of these threads coming out of there, the textures that are going on. Pie said that they are the best costumer in Dragula history, and I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I think that if they were going to present this look as a reason why, it'd be hard to argue.
I think that unfortunately for Pie and Auntie is they had to go against each other for like this camp aesthetic in Dragula. That said, I think they have two very different aesthetics of camp.
Totally.
And I think
Totally.
that I don't know, or I can't come up with an outfit of Pie's that wasn't larger than life, literally at scale. You know what I mean? So, what I loved about Pie's looks is that they were always taking space. Um,
Yes.
and they weren't necessarily literal to proportions that we think of right now, which is a very camp thing to think of, bigger and that kind of thing. This was one of my favorite looks that Pie did throughout the entire season. The killer doll challenge in general, I thought was really fun, but I did agree with the Boulets. Like, do people not know what a doll is? Like, what's happening?
You were
Which
like,
is,
what if my doll was a clown? And then 5 people had the same thought.
and let me just tell you, as somebody who literally hates clowns and is afraid of clowns, not my favorite episode to watch all those back to back to back, but I did it. But what I loved about this, it took me a long time. I don't know why. I knew that was like a push pin or like a needle for the voodoo doll. But I also kind of in my mind had this idea that it was almost like a serrated like blade. Like, oh, is she holding like a little chainsaw? So instead of poking you, she's actually going to hack something off of her. Like, that's what I was thinking. And then it took me a long time to go, oh no, that's a needle. But regardless, I was like, I'm there. Yes. Be larger than life killer doll, have a little chainsaw kind of thing. I think
Speaking
this
of
is great.
speaking of someone else's weapon from this challenge, did you realize Jaharia's look, her blade was actually supposed to be a pair of scissors that was ripped in half. Go check it out.
Oh,
It's very scissory.
I have to put the. Mm.
Mm.
That's for you, lesbians. We love it. No, just kidding. Um, I say that with all the love. So let's turn to what my number three look of the season was. This haunted me for in the best of ways. I loved the Ghost Train challenge, and I thought it was a really fun challenge aesthetically. I don't like this look, admittedly, just on the stage as much. I mean, I love the look, even just on the stage.
Hmm.
But the effectiveness of Aurora Gosmic's Ghost Train kind of blue glamour head to toe with like the white faux fur and this beautiful mermaid gown, and everything is kind of blue, but then like you have the slit throat, which is actually just a necklace of jewels. I thought it was just such a smart way to use glamour in this challenge, and
Hmm.
as Aurora was a glamour queen or is a glamour monster and such, I just felt like this looked so beautiful and striking. It was different from anybody else that we saw. This was definitely a highlight for her, and I felt like, we don't get to see a lot of things like this on Dragula. So to me, it really stood out.
I think that when you're doing a ghost look, it is a better idea to go bright than dark, because in
Yes.
my mind, if when I was a kid and I expected to see a ghost in my room, it would always be like the most transparent, not opaque, and this is giving that
Yeah.
absolutely. I love the slash and the suitcase, and like it's almost like, yes, she got murdered too, but like also her belongings got murdered as well. I just very, very clever.
It's so
I
cool.
I really liked Aurora this season. I wish that they had come with a little bit more of that Dragula grit,
Yeah.
I would say is the right word. But I think that they also could come back and have a lot more awareness of where to push it next.
I feel like coming at, when we think of the classic glamour monsters who have been on the show, I don't think she's at the Melissa B. Fierce level right now where Melissa was in Melissa's first season, but I see her absolutely being at that level or higher if she were to come back in a couple of years. So if there's a Titan season next year, I almost don't want to see her on that because I want her just to cook a little longer than one more year. I would
Agreed.
love to see her, in a couple of years. I would love to see her, really find a unique way to, like this, to use glamour in a horror space. I think that I think she has a really, really cool eye of what to do. So our number two choices, this time I'm on the left and Sugar's on the right. I chose Auntie Heroine. I was trying so hard not to choose people in the top three, but I was like, I loved this monochromatic look. Like when they did the monochromatic looks, I will say I don't know if this counts because like the skin is white, quote unquote, for this creature, and then everything else is black. I know that they were trying to do mostly black, white, gray, that kind of thing. But this to me is exactly the kind of thing that horrifies me. When I look at those kind of mouths and lack of eyes, that scares
Mhm.
me. The fact that it's bright white and black and that's it scares the shit out of me. But then there's glamorous aspects to it that makes me want to look at it even more. Like there's stoning that, starts to fade out it's getting blended out into the skin or something. Like that is so cool on the shoulders. You see a little bit of the blending and like the hairline of the black up into like this like pointy crown, and then like the lack of like human arms and more like a praying mantis or something. Like it's all the things that I don't like about bugs and like creatures like that being, humanized in a creepy way. I thought it was creepy and glamorous, and I really, really liked it. And her performance was, I hated it because it was creeping me out. I loved it. I mean, but
I think this is also Auntie's biggest transformation away from their own normal drag character, but it still
mhm.
had all of those Auntie elements that I love. I loved the way that the arms slowly developed and their floor show to like
Yes.
it was one size and then it was a completely different size. I don't want to go too on and on about this, but I really loved how captivating this was.
Yeah. What about your second favorite look from the season?
It's got to be Asia's Art the Clown from episode 1. I mean, it was the first look that beat all the other monsters, and for good reason. I think Art the Clown is a very simple character to identify. Black and white, creepy clown, that's about it. Bold print is also a word I would assume with Art the Clown.
Harlequin kind of thing.
Yes, and in Asia understood all of those elements, understood their own drag character, and combined it all in such a fun package. They had poop in their butt. Let's start and end the season with poop. Why not?
That's it.
And
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
I just realized it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. And Scylla also poop, poop this
Well,
season,
I was just going to say, Scylla did not make it to the end.
but she started
But
this season shit.
I know. It's
Wah, wah,
true.
wah,
Wah,
wah.
wah.
But I love the
She did
trash
go home on
bags.
episode 2.
Number 2.
She was number 2. to
No,
go.
I love the trash bags for the mermaid skirt. At the
That's my
bottom of the
favorite
gun.
part.
There's so much thought behind what Asia does. So even if it feels like a little chaotic, it's their energy and their styling of it fully brings it together to the point where it's not a chaotic thing. No, this is an Asia consent moment, and that's murdered it.
I think that she combines all three elements of drag in this, or for Dragula, the glamour, the horror, and the filth. You get all three of them right there. And the fact that this was in the first episode set our bar pretty high for her, and she mostly met, if not exceeded, that bar.
I think H is also the kind of smart person who recognized the last two times they did the horror icon challenge. It was the first challenge. So, okay, it's very Drag Race. Like,
Yes!
what the recurring challenges are. So you should have an idea of when they're placed in the season.
Agreed.
So if you get a horror icon next year, assume it's the first challenge and make sure that's probably one of the most impressive looks in your package.
You have to assume a few different things. One, that there's going to be some kind of monsters of rock or music. And in this season, we didn't get that. And we got the musical instead, which we will get to.
We will get to.
But you can expect D&D. You can expect horror icon. And pretty much anything else from there is going to be like, there's going to be probably some kind of ghost at some point.
Ghost has been a recurring thing the last few years.
There's going to be a filth challenge. There's going to be things like that. So similarly to Drag Race, where you, like you said, you can kind of anticipate those things. Our top favorite looks of the season, besides the finale, are right here. So here's where we get to say, Beth, you dumb idiot. It's both on this little skull staff and on his head. I chose Gray Matter's satyr look from the DBD challenge. And Sugar chose Gray Matter's monochromatic look. So both of our top choices here were a Gray Matter look, both two different ones. Let's start with the DBD one. For me, what I liked the most about this look is that we think of satyrs as being very, like, they're the helpful, they help the half gods essentially. In Greek mythology, they're agents of good. They're people who are, and animals that are, they kind of bridge together different aspects of nature and magic and fae and the gods and all that kind of stuff. So I love when you take something like that and completely twist it on its head to make it demonic, make it just evil. I don't know. I just thought that was really good. And this was an aspect where I felt like the mask details were incredible. The teeth and everything were great. I loved the look and how it brought up into his torso. I loved some of these like leather aspects that bring a kind of bondage feel. The horns, the effects, the staff, and most importantly, how he used all of that in his performance, to me was like, holy crap, that's a killer I want to run away from for sure.
So I got to speak on another podcast about this episode, the Cup, currently unnamed podcast. Check them out. I'm gonna plug them. You're welcome, y'all.
There you go.
But we talked about this episode, and this was pretty much universally our agreed favorite look from that challenge: the blood beard. I just want to talk about that blood beard for a little minute because this is what Gray does best. Is like thinks about like the science behind what is actually happening on them, and the science is, if this person is eating people and stuff over and over again and never washes the center of their beard, what would that look like? And it would look like this. It would look like a dry, disgusting, dripping with blood and dried blood. So good. I'm so curious, of the 4 characters from the Dead by Daylight challenge, what is the one that you would see the easiest in the game? Because I know who this one. That's what I assumed too.
I didn't get all the photos up for that challenge, but just the DVD challenge was both very fun and also a little frustrating as a DVD gamer or a previous DVD. I played the game for 5-6 years, people, and that's all I did for 5-6 years was playing DVD.
She has a voice about it.
I have a voice. I felt like they should provide who the killers currently are and what you'd be trying to go, because the whole point was to create a new killer, not a
Hmm.
skin for a current killer, which I think if they ever did something like this again, I'm just saying that's where you should go, is choose one of these characters and create your own version of your drag character
Ooh.
in that to me would be cool because that would be a skin that anybody could have. Now, what they're doing right now is apparently some kind of like DLC, where you're going to get a Boulet brothers. I don't know if it's a chapter or what's happening, but with a chapter normally comes a survivor and a killer, sometimes a map, and typically some skins to go with them or with some of the pre-existing characters. The problem I had with this particular challenge was that Yuri looked a lot like a character who's already in there, the plague.
Hmm.
And uh Asia, and she had elements of the artist. That's what it was. The artist and the plague. So the long like claw kind of things from the artist. And
Hmm.
then the plague had that more of like the color palette aesthetic that she was going for. Asia, who watches Dragula and plays Dead by Daylight, essentially did a very basic skin for what both the Huntress and the Trapper have already had since the game came out in 16 or something. And
Hmm.
it didn't feel new. It didn't even feel like Asia to me. It just felt like here's a general skin that could go on pretty much any character. So when she won, I'm not arguing that it wasn't a good outfit. I'm just saying it's not inventive for that game. They already do a lot with like skulls and horns and such. Um, and I can't remember who Auntie did, what Auntie
Oh,
did.
Auntie was like a stripper demon. It was like a full fishnet bodysuit with these giant wings,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the fishnet took me so far out of it. I'm so
That was the
sorry.
problem. Was like that for me just felt like it didn't match the challenge. It's like I don't know. That's where it kind of took me out of it. I'm remembering it now. But
Also,
this oh go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
said this also about Yuri's look. Like, and I have since looked at all of the characters that you can play as a killer and looked at specifically what they were wearing. Even the girls wearing dresses have a high slit, something that makes it capable to run. And I'm sorry, Yuri, you're in a ball gown. You're in a
This
ball
is
gown
what
with a
I'm
mermaid skirt.
saying.
Are you so you're just gonna go around the forest? No,
Now,
you're not. You're not
but
gonna
here's
do.
the thing. I mean, it could be that, she's gonna float or something because there are those aspects of it too, right? I mean, there are like the nurse is floats above and she's really slow moving, but she can blink really fast and
Mhm.
teleport.
Um,
So there's things like that. But the whole point I'm saying is that when you looked at the challenge, I felt like not only did Gray actually complete the instructions of a brand new idea for a killer, this is completely different from what you see at anything else. It's also incredibly well done. So for me, he absolutely crushed that challenge, and I was so upset he didn't win it.
well, a challenge he did crush and did
Yeah,
win was the monochromatic challenge. I mean, his name is Gray, for Christ's sakes. Like, how is he gonna lose this one? Just,
exactly.
I'm so happy that Violet Chachki pointed out the jacket that he was wearing and how just like outside of this whole look, it's a beautiful tailored piece. Just
Hmm.
the presentation for this felt like the first time we truly got to see Gray this season like be the star, be the full star of their show, and was just so cool to watch those wings. I
So
loved the
cool.
way that the wings moved, the way that they really worked on. They probably stared in a mirror for a while and thought about exactly how their arms needed to move to make the wings look
Oh yeah.
not just like you're doing this, but like how it's almost alive. So good. I love the shape, how it's almost like it just makes them look so tall
Oh yeah.
and strong. And I would never want to run into
Formidable.
this. Yes, I would never want to run into her on a street. No, I'm gonna turn around and just lay down and die. That's the plan.
I I love this. I think it was incredible. I also was like, I don't remember if it was Drac or Swan, but which one didn't realize that it was not their arms in the
Jack.
front.
Drac.
Drac said that, and I was like, "Me too, Drac." It took me a second. I was like, "How the wings moving? Oh wow!" And then, oh, okay, Beth. Well, their arms are not moving. So, the thing I love this look. Don't get me wrong. Everything that you've said, I completely agree with. I think it's fashionable. I think it's unique and that kind of thing. This is the episode that made me go, I wish I could see his face so he could be expressive to match these things. Because the only issue I have with this is with everything else so thought out and moving slowly and methodically, it is absolutely creepy, but it comes across as an elaborate Halloween lawn decoration rather than a creature to me. When it came to the performance, I need to say that
Okay.
specifically. That is not a bad thing, may I say. I think that it invokes something really interesting and unique, but it made me wish, man, at some point, I really want to see him use the muscles of his face and not just a mask. And the reason why I kind of liked some of the masks that he wore in like the finale, for example, or even the satyr look here, is because you got aspects of like using nonverbal communication in the masks
Mm-hmm.
were able to reflect that. This one is just here. So you can't really do much with it. And it's the only thing that took me out because I was so invested in it. I didn't even know that his arms weren't in the front, really. Like there were all those things that I just thought was so mesmerizing. I just wish from a performance standpoint, I could have gotten some more nonverbal communication of what he's trying to impose. But I think the presence is the imposition. I think that's what he's really trying to do.
I can
Incredible
respect that.
look. It was definitely in my top 5. And because I knew you were putting it, I was like, well, that's good. I don't need to put it. I'll do something else. So
And I'm
great.
so
So
glad. I'm so glad you put Gray Matters D by D look. So yeah, no,
yeah, it's
we have good
happening.
taste, y'all. We have good
We
taste.
do. Well, speaking of good taste, let's talk about some of our other favorite things before we wrap up this podcast and talking about Dragula season 6. I would love to know from you, what were your top 3 favorite challenges?
Do we want to go like third, second, first? Like
Yeah.
let's go together. So third place, and I bounced around, and I will acknowledge that monochromatic monsters was on my list at one point, and
Mm,
then I remembered the silent movie aspect of the challenge, and I had to like, that wasn't that fun to watch actually. So
yeah.
in terms of, so this is how I feel about Dragula season 6. Outside of Dragula the musical, I think
Mhm.
that this has probably been the best lineup of challenge prompts that a season has ever produced. Like
Yeah.
truly just pushing every aspect of what you can take a challenge to be. So for third place, I have Holiday of Horrors for me.
Very cool. Yes. I chose actually monochrome because I was somebody who actually felt like the silent movie portion is a good test because it relies on nonverbal communication, which is why I wasn't as high on Gray's performance of it, if that makes sense. But or like the stage showing whatever.
Sure.
But I love the monochromatic look. And clearly, I mean, I chose Auntie's look. I had Gray in my top 5 for that one. I felt like we got to see some really interesting and different takes from a lot of those artists, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was really cool.
Ooh, and can we clock the tea that Jaharia absolutely switched their runway for episode 1? It's so obvious.
1,000%. All of a sudden, I was like, I wonder where that webbed foot kind of bodysuit was supposed to
Yeah, I
be.
was like, why was your first episode so black and white, and the black and white challenge was so not black and white, Jaharia? Huh? Maybe it's because there was 2 other Draculas in the first challenge, and you didn't want to be a big old bat next to them. I
Why
think it
didn't
was a
we
good,
pick that up? It was a good
genuinely.
move.
I think it was a good move. I think it was a good move, but
It
that's what
is.
happened. That's what happened.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for Jaharia, and I think this is my point with what I was saying before. I feel like Jaharia is somebody who is, absolutely creative and an amazing performer, but can't either doesn't have the resources or the abilities and such yet at people like Victoria Elizabeth Black, Grey Matter, and all those kind of things. And so it's the kind of Chi Devane feeling like I don't have the money for all these clothes, and they're like, well, you got fabric and shit, and you know how to sew, get to it. And I think like that is an absolutely fair response, but I also think like it's not a fair playing field. But
Mm-hmm.
we have to remember that none of these shows have a fair playing field. because
No.
there is no such thing as a fair playing field when you're talking about other people's subjective opinions and your own experiences, and your experiences being, reflected in your art, in your style, in your performance, and all that kind of stuff. So there is no way to have a fair playing field. But I just wanted to say, like, I love Jaharia, and I do think that, like, comparatively, her looks were not as, thought out all the way or as well put together. But I know just from what I've seen of her on television, she's going to be growing
Oh,
and she's
absolutely.
going to be a force.
And we were talking about this before we recorded. I am originally from Kansas City, which is where Chahari is from, which is where Q, Widow Von Du, Mo Hart, Cynthia Doll, like the Kansas City drag scene. I just want to take a moment to talk about it
Yeah,
because
please do.
I'm saying we as if I'm there. I'm never there.
Oh, 1 second. I just realized, 1 second. Sorry about that. I had a technical difficulty, but Sugar, tell me more about the Kansas City drag
Kansas City
scene.
drag scene. It is a powerful scene, and it's a scene that I've as someone who's been in LA for the past 7 years, I have just watched it grow from afar, and just watching all these names that I've heard about for years finally getting the recognition they deserve is just so powerful to me, and it just warms my heart. It makes me emotional. We got some heavy hitters. I'm going to try to think of a few names that are like up and comers that you're definitely going to see on Drag Race or Dragula soon. Karma Sutra, who did most of Jaharia's, if not all of their wigs this season, as well as basically all of Q's wigs from season 16 of Drag Race. I would say there's Scary Cherry. There's Lana Lux, who I believe was an alternate at Miss Continental this year.
Ooh.
You got Mulan. You have, Candice Marie. We got badass bitches in Kansas City.
And even though she's not in Kansas City anymore, Sugar Free, who's going to be the first drag queen. We are manifesting that to play on Big Brother. We are going to manifest this.
Mm-hmm. Manifest this
Manifesting
woman.
this woman. If you were to do Big Brother and would you be in drag as much as possible on the show?
I
Or would
would
you kind of do like the Courtney act when she was on the UK version, which is different?
a little bit closer to the Courtney act, just play
Yeah.
around with it. But I'm not going to tell everything. I'm not going to tell everything. I don't know what super fan like Quinn is listening to this, who is like, well, I could compete with Sugar Free in 2 years, so I have to write down everything about this person. I was listening to Carson and Carolyn's Survivor podcast, and Carson mentioned that he had figured out somehow through being in the hotel that Carolyn was a person competing, and like overheard Carolyn's name, and then went to the casting director's Instagram and looked at everyone they're following and was able to cyber stalk Carolyn before filming even happened. Like,
That's smart.
I don't want to give any smart people a smart plan. So
You know what? At this point, that's a smart thing to do. Because pre-gaming always exists, whether you
my
want it.
drag name in Big Brother is going to be Tammy Sue, and that's it.
Tammy
You're not going to
Sue.
know it's even me.
Yeah, she's a single mom who works too hard,
loves her kids,
and never. Okay. So anyway, Sugar, what is your second favorite challenge of the season?
So my second favorite challenge has to be the weird little Frankenhooker challenge. I mean,
ooh, the Frankenhooker.
Frankenhooker. You don't. It's like one of those things where you just read the title of the episode and you go, I know exactly what I'm about to get. And
I know that I'm watching Dragula.
Yeah. I didn't know it was based off a movie. I love that they talked about it and were like, this movie is problematic, but this prompt is so Dragula that how do you even argue with it?
I do. So I didn't know it was based off of that either. And I am not somebody who is easily offended, mostly because I have a lot of privilege. So what am I being offended about? I get offended on behalf of other people, which is also very white of me. But I I liked that they took a moment to just have that frank, like, hey, we know this is problematic, but what we're trying to do is give queer people and women like the space to kind of like reclaim like being a hooker, a whore, a sex worker, somebody who enjoys sex, those kind of things, and do it in a queer way that comes from a place of empowerment and not punching down. And so that I always thought, like, I always appreciate that kind of thing that Dragula does that I don't feel like many other shows in general do. But I liked that challenge. I just kind of felt like for me, it was more of like a typical Dragula challenge. So I thought it was cool and I liked some of the concepts for it for sure. But I don't know if it was in my, it definitely wasn't in my top 3, but it probably would have been in my top 5.
That's fair. That's fair. For me, I put it there because of the originality of the challenge concept.
Yes.
And I loved Yuri just owning it and just being the sex pot that I wanted to see.
If there's one thing I learned, it's that Yuri has this magnetic sex appeal that is just so delicious when she's really feeling it. And you saw it a couple of times, like in the Ghost Train and all the other stuff. It's just it's a soft sexiness that I love.
All right.
My number 2 was DVD, and we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
What is your number 1 challenge from this season?
My number 1 challenge, and I know that you just said that you didn't love parts of it, but Killer Dolls.
Oh,
Come on, Killer Dolls. The Chucky of it all. Come on. There's so many aspects to why it was such a fun challenge to watch. Watching, yes, there was some repetitiveness in the themes. However, I didn't care that much. I still saw enough different types of dolls, and I have I Love Hollywood by Slater on repeat now. I love Hollywood. Ha! Like, yeah, great, perfect. And just anytime that Jaharia gets to stomp on a stage and murder it, I'm gonna be entertained.
She can stomp on my neck. That's fine.
And she'll go, the whole
and
time.
I'll go,
She'll go,
I'll go, oh yeah. I thought the Killer Dolls were fun. I'll be honest. There aren't many lip sync songs that I care that much about when it comes to Dragula.
Agreed.
And I think it was worse for me this season because of the musical episode. Let's just take a moment because you and I have both expressed how much we dislike the musical episode.
So, okay. I have such conflicted mixed feelings because is there something punk rock about being like, hey, Dragula contestants, you have to now sing in a musical? That's the kind of torture to the contestants that I live for.
Agreed.
The torture to the viewers having to watch and listen to it is where it starts to get dicey. When I was watching it for the first time, I didn't know if this was their way of poking fun at Drag Race, but I didn't feel like it was obvious enough that they were doing that. Mm-hmm.
It felt more earnest than what I feel like a tongue-in-cheek satire of a drag race episode should be.
Have you seen Drag the Musical yet live?
No, and I really want to.
So I got to see it live this spring, I want to say. It was when I saw it in LA. But so I at least got an understanding of the source material.
Yeah.
It was a pretty clean homage to Drag the Musical, but it felt like this was truly just the Boulets being like, Rue's not going to invite you to do this on her show. Come do it on ours.
Exactly. And that's exactly how it came across to me. It came across as an earnest thing rather than let's embarrass the contestants. The more I know and have learned about it, the point was this is an episode to make the contestants feel cringe and have to be embarrassed and all that kind of stuff. But it never came across like that from production to audience. Like there was never the moment that was like, this week we're going to make our contestants go back into the mainstream and see how uncomfortable they can be because we love freaks, but we hate normal. And here's what you're used to seeing. Like that kind of thing, maybe I would have gotten into it a little bit more, but everything was just too cringe and feeling too earnest of like a Drag Race replica that it took away anything I love about Dragula. And I just really didn't like it. I didn't like any aspect of it. Any.
I mean that
sincerely.
It's hard to argue with it. I don't mind cringe as much. I don't like fictional cringe, if that
Right.
makes sense. If it's
Yeah,
like
no.
if it is a character who is just being cringy and I'm just like, you're even no, but if it's a real person, I'm like, I don't know how to explain it. It just I'm like, oh, you actually
You
have to
looked like
this is
that
real.
you looked like that meme of that girl who's like, yeah, like, and like, yes, you're really good at that. It's like, what's it like, the crazy girlfriend or something?
the
Okay.
yeah.
But anyway,
Anyways,
honestly, so I just really I felt like that was the worst episode of Dragula of all time. And then and I
agreed.
felt like there was a good episode after. I can't remember which one was after that. And then that's where like the Frankenhooker was like a couple weeks after, and it just generally felt like, all right, now we're kind of just putting crews on Dragula. And I think that's the only reason why I didn't like Frankenhooker as much, was because it was still trying to figure out the pacing after the Dragula musical episode.
Totally.
Um, but with all that said, my number one favorite challenge, I loved the Ghost Town challenge. And that had a musical group number aspect to it that I didn't like as much. I will be honest. I know it was a Boulet Brothers original song, all that kind of stuff. That's great. I loved the individual performances on the
Mm-hmm.
train, the aesthetics, the cinematography, the effects, the queen or the monsters themselves. Everything was so cool. I loved it. And I we had done like I still love the ghost western one, like the old
From season
west from
two.
season 2. So this kind of harkened to that, but like in a
Mm-hmm.
very different way. I don't know. Like I just like this. Let's take the roots of American culture and things that we already kind of associate potential like ghost town or ghost whatever to it, and then make it Dragula, make it drag. And that I think is really cool. They haven't done lighting or anything like that before with our
Mm-hmm.
contestants, and so it was just, I thought that was really cool and a great way to do something new with an older concept.
Mm-hmm. And the set was so cool. Having a full
Amazing.
train. Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
It really was like a fun spectacle. And I do think that it probably was like, unfortunately, Dragula the music like came right after that. So
Yeah.
it sort of like faded from my memory.
But I
Yeah.
think that's the reason why Aurora's outfit has always stuck out to me, is because that episode was such a highlight for me. So I couldn't help but be like, but Aurora's look, it was so good. And Yuri's performance, even though I think she got a lot of slack for her outfit, or
Agree.
she should have gotten more flack for it, is what I meant. But
Yes, yes.
like, why is this the only thing that's white? Why is not anything else on your body? Anyway, I know that you're trying to do like the painted face or whatever, but there's ways to do that.
Hmm.
What were your favorite extermination challenges, or least favorite in sense of that you would want to do them?
Well, let's just talk. I'm not going to mention the piercing challenge because they already did
Right.
it.
And the
Um,
sharks. Like we've
and
already talked about sharks and piercing and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, overall, I was a little let down with the like quasi legacy aspect of the
yeah,
exterminations, being like half of these are going to be completely new things. The other half is going to be doing the same thing that you
just a
already have
little
seen.
worse.
Yeah, which I one of those I do have on my list, but third place I had the shock cage. Shock
Yes.
cage seemed
Yes.
awful.
That's number 2 for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Having to hold on more than the other person. So you have a competitive aspect to it, but you're also like being fucking tortured with shocks. That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
competitive. And so I would have held on to that shit for a long ass time.
Same. And I think it's one of those things that like actually probably gets easier the longer you do it.
Yeah.
Like you just like sort of get you it's sort of like a tattoo. You just get used to it.
Yeah. I've never had a tattoo, so I can't like I know, I'm thinking about getting my first one.
You should do it.
But
Because here's the
we'll
thing: the
see.
second you get your first one, and it's like it's so
I'm just gonna be
precious and
all plain.
important. Literally, though, like I
Yeah.
got so like I said, this gummy bear syringe is inspired by a tattoo on my back, and I got
Ooh.
that, and then I was like, wow, I'll get 5 more things now. So yeah, slippery slope.
I had that as as my number 2. My number 3 was the Dead by Daylight, collecting the coffins while people were doing, not because I thought it would be like hard, but because I genuinely thought that was fun. Like there's a part of me that was like, I kind of want to set up something like this in a warehouse with friends and like film these kind of things and do
Yeah.
rounds and rounds and rounds. Like this kind of sounds like a shit ton of fun.
And it
Maybe
was
instead of paintballs, it's, you know, laser tag kind of thing. But, you know, I just thought it was the idea of having to collect points. I think there's absolutely a way to bring Dead by Daylight to like a real life thing where somebody, you know, I don't know. I just think it would be fun. I thought it was so cool.
It was just so cute watching like they're like the Yuri's right here and it's like scuttling behind the box. It was a really cute challenge for sure.
It was in terms of entertainment, it was one of the best ones to watch. In terms of doing it, I would do it in a heartbeat, so it's nowhere near a scary thing. I just wanted to highlight it because it was so different.
All right. Well, my number 2 is a repeat from a different challenge, but it's a repeat where they fully amped up how torturous it was, which is the electroshock latex vacuum chamber.
That's my number 1.
Yeah.
As you remember, the latex chamber was already on my list of shit that I did not want to do when we had our first podcast. This ended up being the number 1 because now I'm thinking, holy shit, you can't even concentrate on how to make yourself zen because you're being fucking shocked.
Yeah, because I never thought of it as that hard. I was like, okay, they're going to put a piece of latex over and I'll hold my breath for a little bit. Being shocked at the same time changes everything.
Yeah, it changes everything. It changes the way in which that you are experiencing any sort of feeling. In addition to, it's probably going to want to make you hyperventilate, which is going to make it worse with the latex. You're likely, I think this would literally be so physically and mentally torturous for me. I honestly think I'd have a breakdown afterwards. And I'm not being dramatic. I just know me. This would be something I want them to, I'd look at the Boulets and be like, you better have those cameras rolling because you're about to get gold. And you better have a therapist on fucking call for me right now.
If there's not a therapist on set for every second of Dragula, I'll be shocked. I'm sorry. This is drag artists, but also punk rock drag artists.
Yes.
Okay.
They're all damaged people. We are all damaged people. It doesn't matter who you are damaged.
Mm-hmm. After the year 2020, sorry, you're damaged. Everyone in the world is damaged. Kudos to Haria, Aurora, and any of the people in production that had to test that. Like, literally cheers, because I couldn't handle that. Weirdly enough, I could handle my number 1, but it does feel like the most torturous. I wrote the freeze chamber.
Okay, I thought about doing that one. I know I would be able to do it no problem.
Same.
And it would absolutely, like, I could act it. Like, oh, no, this sucks. I want everyone to know that my version of the Big Brother black box that I think they should do is like a how badly do you want it, is to have a box that gets colder and colder and colder and colder in the dark.
Oh, you're turning me on.
And after a while, you start to get little mists that come in, like spray mist and such. Just the kind of things that Big Brother does already for like, how badly do you want it? Stand with your hand on the button, but instead of a pit of snakes that goes nowhere, and it's just visually there's snakes in front of you. I would love the idea of, okay, it drops at least 5 degrees every half an hour or something, and see how long you can make it. It starts at 75 degrees, you know, and you're in LA. So you're like, oh, this is nice. 75. Hell yeah. And then, oh, actually it's a little cold now at 65. Oh, it's really cold at 60. And then people get really cold. Well, I'm just somebody who loves being cold. So
same. No, I'm like, we should go hang out in an igloo sometime. Sounds fun.
I would love. That's the thing. Like, I'm somebody who I don't put on a winter coat unless it's like 15 degrees or colder. I grew up in the coldest part of New York State, with cold winds of Canada blowing down on top of me. I live 20 minutes away from Canada. So I grew up where for the middle of January to middle of February, it rarely went above 0 degrees. I know cold, and I love it.
Yeah, Kansas City also super cold in the winter, super hot in the summer. Unfortunately, having been in LA for the past 7 years, I am a baby for some like extreme cold.
Yeah.
But like, no, also, if it's 50 degrees out, I'm wearing a t-shirt. am.
But I loved that one because I thought about how was it season 2? I think it was season 2 with the ice buckets that they had to stand in. A lot of
That's
season 2 love today. But that one I always thought like that would suck because that's different than your whole body being exposed. That is just your feet. As you're putting all of your weight on them, like that would suck. I would still do it.
Here's the thing. I've done it. I've done that before. There was
What?
my first ever drag show was at Upright Citizens Brigade, and it was a torture comedy show. So all of the acts were self-inflicted torture in your bit. So I lip synced to "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" while the audience injected me with my insulin. And then yeah.
You
Um,
trusted your audience?
I trusted the people I knew in the audience, and
Fair. Okay,
the
good.
needles are very small, and I made super obvious X marks where the needles were supposed to go.
And then Hollow Eve came out of nowhere and was just like, "Hey, let me tell you about needle play on stage."
But the finale was the top 3 acts had to do a torture challenge, which was to stand in a bucket of ice, and the other comedians were like screaming. They were like in so much pain. I am chilling up there. I am so just
Chilling.
flat. I am literally an ice cube, and I loved it. So
I love
the
that.
only see
They
the
should have played
mist.
Ice Ice Baby over that.
Well, the mist part of the freeze chamber is probably what really put it in number 1. Because
Oh,
I
for
can
sure.
a dry cold is nothing. A wet cold, that is what lingers and kills you.
And to be honest, too, I have been so I won't tell the whole story because the audience is probably like, geez, when will you answer the question? But there was a time where I was stuck out in a boat in the middle of the lake of the in the Adirondacks for hours. And it was probably 48 or so degrees outside. And I just had a hoodie and that kind of thing, which normally would not bother me. But when you have had no relief from that for about 5 hours and you're in the middle of Tupper Lake and you can't get anywhere, and like, that sucks. So, and I was there with other friends and we were all laughing about it. And then come to find out the boat worked fine when we got back. So our friend was just stupid. Anyway, all of that being said, I agree with you. I think the mist, the fact that it also seemed like there were times where like it wasn't just mist, like they were really blowing water on them. And so that
Mhm.
would feel like water obviously gets more dense as it gets colder. So even if it's not ice yet or anything or hail or anything, it still is going to hurt.
Mhm.
And so I was like, ooh, yeah, I've been there. I've had freezing rain and sleet and shit cover me. That is not fun. It's not a good time. So why don't we talk about our favorite? There's no reason to talk about any of the exterminations
I know,
themselves, the death
yeah,
scenes,
I
but
made a
there's
list.
oh,
I made a
are they?
list.
Okay, make
But
this list, but we're going to talk about the number one because it's the only one that is worth talking about at the end of the day.
unfortunately, in terms of death scenes, this season was a little lacking, and it's unfortunate. So in third place, I put Severity. It was well done scene.
Yeah,
Second place, I put Aurora. Well done scene.
yeah.
Good pacing. First place, the only place that matters. I wish we had a soundbite of it, but Yuri, guys, just her short film about going back home to Australia.
And the best part is we all know what's actually coming at some point. We know she's going to die. We know. And so I'm
But
sitting there and I love that Yuri knows it too. And it starts off and, she's very like, oh, okay, bye. Bye.
are you
Bye.
gonna kill me?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show and all this. And I'm sitting
But
there and I'm like, uh oh, like, is this
oh,
when she turns around and Swan's there and just like kills? And but
my
then
favorite
she
line
goes,
from that, my favorite whole line for that, she goes, "No, that's just the show. That's just a little bit of make believe." And it truly just feels like any second it could turn, and the music is scary still, it's still ominous, but then the closer she gets to like the bright side room, all of a sudden a ukulele takes over and
and
she
you
goes,
know what? We start seeing her in all the ways we've seen people leave untucked, like when they're eliminated from Drag Race. She gets in the van. We see her drive off the lot. And I
oh,
was like,
you forget about the cast and crew who is
are
cheering for her
cheering
as
for
she
her,
welcomes.
gives her flowers and like all this stuff. And they're all cheering for her. And I'm just sitting here going, I didn't look at this up, obviously, but in my head, there was a moment where I was like, Is this actually a weird, like, did she die, like, in real life? Are we doing, like, some kind of, like, "Hey, normally she would die on the show, but because she's passed in real life."
Because
I
yes.
I literally I'm sitting there, I'm like, "How the fuck did I not know she died or something?" I'm sitting there, and, like, at first I was like, "Oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's oh, I wonder, is she okay? Like, is this, like, why is this touchy for her?" And then I was like, "There's no way. They're gonna show her, like, walk in her house and get, like, killed by the Boulets or something like that."
I was like, I thought it was going to be the second she set one foot in Australia.
Yes, like, something happened. What I did not expect was what actually happened, Sugar, which was what?
Which is she goes to LAX, she goes through TSA, you know, she gets on the plane, and then there's just like a shot of the airplane and a little portion by a tree, and she goes, "I have my whole life ahead of."
And then
like a,
just explodes.
like a 2004 like flash animation
Yes.
explosion, like just so campy.
And so it's so fun. I laughed for so long.
Same.
And I love when you can see something coming for so long and you still think it's amazing. It's so funny.
Well, and it's because the way that they chose to finally do the kill was just, this is the first Dragula death scene where there was other civilians who were murdered at the same time.
Absolutely. Well,
This
and
is.
did we even see other people on the plane?
Well, who flew the plane?
I don't know.
Was it
Israel?
Yuri?
I feel like Israel never dies. That would have been amazing.
Israel just like is like on the ground and just picks himself up and walks away.
I would have died if when they close the doors and she sits down, we get a shot
Where she looks around and knows,
and notices she's the only one on the plane, and she goes, "What?" And then the camera goes up to the cockpit and it's him, and then you see the flight, like whatever, just something like that. Anyway, brilliant, so campy, so
and
funny, incredibly well done, and nobody can hold a candle.
No one in this cast deserves that but Yuri. Let's talk, because we haven't really fully talked about Yuri.
Yes.
Because I saw Yuri on Down Under, and I was like, aesthetically great, personality. They didn't give Yuri a personality on Drag Race, so for her to come on to Dragula and just be, in my opinion, if it wasn't for the fact that work visas are hard, I would pick Yuri for the Exorcister. I just loved everything about her personality. Her confessionals were hilarious. Her energy was so sweet.
She's also very self-aware. And what I think I liked about it is that, you know, she's not afraid to go, "I don't fucking understand that," or like, whatever this is or whatever. And in a world where, myself included, there are lots of times where I've been fighting this idea where I have to be right or I have to know everything. It's really refreshing when you see someone who genuinely knows themselves and isn't afraid to be like, "I'm dumb, I don't get this," or "I'm not as creative as this person, I'm going to do this thing," or whatever. And I'm not saying that in like a deprecating way. I don't like that she was being self-deprecating at times. I just love that there's a lot of people who go onto these shows, especially who are drag queens, who then sit to themselves and go, "I'm fucking awesome and nobody can tell me anything," but it's also a fake sense of confidence.
There's a queen on Canada's Drag Race who is doing that. I won't name names, but they've already said out loud, like, "I'm gonna serve it," and then they'll like lose the lip sync, or they'll like just like bomb the challenge a little bit, and it's like, saying it and doing it are different things.
That's for sure. So why don't we finish our little ranking stuff with who are the top 3 monsters we want to see on Titans? Just list all 3 of them for me. Who did you put?
I put in 3rd place Jaharia, Kansas City girl. Maybe not this Titans, but the next Titans, absolutely. The next one is a controversial pick, and I don't think we've talked about them at all. But I want Majesty back. I really do.
I almost put Majesty on this list because I truly do think that Majesty, in the right headspace and with the right set of expectations for themselves and others, would do really well.
I think Titans would be better for them too, because I think them
everybody's a returner.
Everyone's return. I think that really just socially worked against Majesty and really helped the cast band together against them subconsciously, and that's a big reason why Majesty needed to leave. I really hope they're doing much better now, but the little bit that you got to show of your evolution evolution of your drag, phenomenal. So I would love to see Majesty back. And then I gotta put Grey Matter on top. That's how
I
I
love
feel.
it. I basically I I wouldn't be mad at any of your picks coming back. I would love to see Jahari in a couple cycles. I would love to see I would like to see Majesty come back when they're in the right headspace. And I put Gray Matter as my number 2. My number 1 was Auntie Heroine because I do think that Auntie's the type of person that's going to watch this, take it all in, and be able to come back and just fucking win. Like, I just think that is the way that Auntie's going to work. My number 3 was Pie. I loved Pie.
I'm down for Pie too.
I loved so many of the looks and the performances. I identify a lot with how Pie was interpersonally with people. I think I could really understand the people thinking maybe that you're disingenuous when you're trying to be nice and trying to be, you know, that kind of thing. It's something that I always fight, where I genuinely am somebody who is always trying to uplift and think about others and that kind of thing. But sometimes it sacrifices my true feelings. And then I have a hard time figuring out what my true feelings are. Am I policing them? Are those my real feelings? Am I correcting them? And so all of that I kind of saw in them when they were trying to, you know, make alliances and when they were trying to express themselves and people were saying they were disingenuous and such. There was a lot there that I liked. And I think that coming back into a competition, knowing that that's how other people are going to view you, and what your drag is and everything. I just think Pie is larger than life in so many ways. I would love to see them back.
They were on my short list for sure,
Yeah,
for
sure.
comebacks. But a lot of people this season have a lot to say in drag. So honestly, just have season 6 go again.
Yeah. Well,
do it again. Do it again.
Well, speaking of that, why don't we answer the final question that we've been posed since October? Is season 6 the best season of Dragula since?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. So 3.
Wait, thumbs up, obviously, if it's the best. Thumbs down if it's not. Some people like to go into the whole history of what this actually means, which is opposite. Anyway. All right.
3,
2,
1.
1.
Yeah. And it's just the bar they've set for themselves. And that's really all it is.
So for those that are listening and not watching, we both put thumbs down. So we're both saying, no, it's not the best season of Dragula there's ever been. That said, I think this might be my 3rd favorite, maybe my second favorite.
That. I would say top 3.
It's definitely top 3. I feel like the hits were mega hits and the misses were mega misses. And that is what ultimately made this hard. I felt like every person who went home that one particular week was almost exactly who I figured would go home.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot. There were times where I was like, oh, I guess so-and-so could go home. That would be thrilling. There was so much talk of alliances without any real need for them most of the time.
Because it was just like alliances, and then, okay, the only thing that happened because of the alliances was they punished Grey a few times with curses.
And guess what? It didn't matter. So those are things that, you know, as production continues to think about how to, you know, incorporate this idea of gameplay a little bit, if that's the direction they want to continue to go, I think just, you know, capitalizing on staying true to your brand and such. I think the cast was great. I really enjoyed them. I honestly was kind of annoyed by the people who went early, so I wasn't mad that they went home. I felt like they kind of cast some people who I don't think were necessarily ready for this show, like Scylla and Severity and those kind of things. So, and Desiree. But once all of them were gone, not that the show wasn't interesting before that, I kind of felt like, oh, okay, now the competition begins.
Totally.
So my hope is that I hate feeling like that with anybody who's putting themselves out there in their drag. So my hope is that moving forward, we don't have to worry about that as much. But I think season 7 or Titans or whatever's going to happen is going to be so good. I'm in a very, very good mindset about where Dragula is and where it's heading.
And I love the fact that 6 seasons in, we can be like, wow, it wasn't the best season ever because of nuanced reasons. It's
right.
It's not like, oh, it all went downhill and the show's over. No, just they've done a really good job of making compelling TV before. And I had a thought, and it was that I think that this season could have ended stronger if Majesty had the strength to keep going, because Majesty was the wild card player of the
Yes.
wild card cast. They were
Yes.
someone that had that winner energy and also those ideas. And I think that that would have posed a real threat in the second half of the game. I think
Agreed.
that of unfortunately losing them, the pacing just slowed down.
I also think that there's a couple of things I'm noticing from an editing perspective. Like there were some really weird transitions and those kind of things. And so there were just little things like that that took me out of the moment just for a second. And then I was brought right back in. So just keeping in mind and like those aspects, I think Dragula has been one of the best cinematography. I think it's way better cinematography than Drag Race. The floor
Agreed.
shows and the way that they edit them are probably so much better on camera, the way that they edit and do all of that and film it, rather than just seeing it. Because when they do the pulled back, like when the judges are talking comments and you're seeing footage of them, and it's like, oh, well, then you tripped on it. And we didn't see that like that. And they use slow motion and they use a zoom in on the cape and the dust coming off of it and all that kind of stuff. That is art. And that is something that I think Dragula only gets better at. I just want them to
Mm-hmm.
get a little better at transitioning from one thing to the next, being clear with the audience rather than talking in riddles in the beginning of what exactly they want, the drag artist to go through, all those kind of things. So I don't know.
I no, I agree. I agree.
Very cool.
We've been talking for a while about Dragula, and I really hope that we get Titans soon. I don't think they've started casting yet. Are there any other monsters from other seasons you want to see on there? Like, give me some Sigourney Beaver.
Sigourney Beaver's always going to be on the top of my list. I would love to see Hollow Eve come back. I'm one of those people that just like I want to see someone who does filth and have them come back and do it and
Mm-hmm.
be big and bold and proud about it. And that I would love to see someone like Hollow Eve come back. I'm trying to think.
Cynthia Doll.
Oh yeah, it does. Cynthia. Well, I mean, I feel like this season was, Cynthia Doll was like the recurring co-judge, like or guest. I mean, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So I feel like it's going to be really weird if they don't cast her.
Cynthia Doll was. There's some people where when you say the phrase "you were made for reality television," it can mean a lot of things. But with Cynthia, it's no. Your authentic, not even trying self is so compelling to
Yeah.
watch that I just want to watch you for days. And I
Yep.
I think that Cynthia's resources now, especially the designers in Kansas City, there is a winning
Mhm.
package that Cynthia Doll could present and
Oh, 1,000%.
bring
They
it. That
obviously love her personality as you should and love the performance aspects and the aesthetic. And so I think honestly it's just about getting all those fine details all pinned together. I'm trying to think. It would be great. I don't want to see both Jervis and Throb Zombie on the same season. I think that honestly hurt both of them in a weird way.
kind of
Even
agree.
though
Kind
they're
of agree.
very different drag, but also I don't know when drag kings are still I don't know. But I would like to see one or the other of them. Um
I wanted Disasterina to return.
Disasterino would be fun.
Please,
Oh gosh.
Disasterina.
Do you want any winners to come back?
No, because I
I
think
don't
that the winners have always been judges in future
yeah.
seasons, and I think that
Once you
Dragula.
started judging, I don't think you should be able to go back in the yeah.
Yeah, I think that Dragula could have a Titan of all Titans a few years from now. I wouldn't
Mhm.
mind that once there's been like, 8 main season winners and 2 Titan winners. Bring those 10 back. That sounds
Yeah.
fun. But like Vander's literally working on production. Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't, it's not fair anymore.
Landon literally was a judge twice this season. Like I think that that's what's so cool. I'm struggling. It's not. I like Louisiana Purchase, and I'd like Louisiana to come back, but I'm the other person who was in the top
Dahlia,
four. No, the top four.
Priscilla Chambers.
Priscilla Chambers. Yes, I would like to see Priscilla
Actually,
come back.
wait, yeah, she only came back for Resurrection. Bring me Priscilla Chambers.
Yeah, I
Give
want to
me
see.
Priscilla
I
Chambers.
want to see Priscilla Changers of
Is there
Changers.
anyone from season 1? I
I
wouldn't mind
always
seeing.
want to. I want to see Meatball, just because I want to see how Meatball comes now.
Yeah, but I don't think Meatball talks to the Blaze anymore.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
Yeah. Oh, there's some of
there's some
queen
tea.
the monsters of color have some feelings about Dragula.
Understood. And I think that's more than valid.
I think it's completely valid. But I
Well,
also think that Meatball
could you
is.
imagine if I was like, I don't think that's valid?
You're like, sorry, Meatball, get on the show and like
This
it.
white woman talking about, a person of color's experience and invalidating it on a
Um,
podcast.
I
Oh
I
my
know
God.
Loris pretty well from the LA scene. I think
Hmm.
Loris has some phenomenal ideas and is
Loris is up
messy in
there.
messy television too. So
Well, I think that Loris is almost a shoo-in because I feel like the Boulets really like Loris as well, right?
and
So,
Loris regularly helps sew other people's drag races packages. Like they constantly have looks of theirs.
mm.
Latrice All Stars 4, their latex gown they wore. I don't know if that makes well, that was Loris.
Oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So, I think Loris would be great. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else from season 2 that I haven't seen already because I would love Erica, but Erica's already come back, so I don't,
Hmm.
you know.
We had Dolly, I think just Disasterina. I mean, Felony Dodger, come on back.
Yeah, we
Show
cheer
us why
for
you
you.
didn't quit drag.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that this is a great place for us to end. I want to thank Sugar Free for coming on and talking about all things Dragula for me for like 2.5 hours. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Where
so much
can
for having me.
Yes, where can people find you online, or if you're going to be performing anywhere, where could they find you?
I might start actually performing again soon. So I
Ooh.
like sort of took a break from the physical drag space. My physical
Yeah.
health, I had some family stuff come up where I just needed
Sure.
a break. And I realized that I was much happier just, existing in my own world. And coming on to podcasts, like I said, like I've been podcasting with another group recently, and it's like it just feels like a fun way to like get back into the swing of being in drag a lot. And so yeah, I reached out to some friends. I'm gonna try to perform in LA soon, but if you're not in LA and you want to find me, I am Sugar Free Queen on Blue Sky. You can technically find me sugarfree_queen on Twitter. I am only keeping that up because people follow me on Twitter that I like. Please
Yeah.
follow me on Blue Sky as well, Mike Bloom, so I can delete the Twitter.
I'll text him right after this. That's not even a joke.
Be like, whoa, Sugar Free threw some real shade at you, Mike.
Do you
So
have an Instagram?
yeah, and Instagram, you can check me out. I think it's sugarfree_queen.
And that's also probably a good place for people to find you if you have any gigs that are digital or in person coming up as well, right?
Mm-hmm. And then
Great.
check me out. I talk every now and then on the Cup podcast, currently unnamed
Yes.
podcast. So check us out.
Lovely. You can follow me at AugustaWind11 on Instagram. I no longer have a Twitter as of this past week. I'm very, very happy about it. I've made the full transition to Blue Sky, where I am actually not AugustaWind11 over there. I am what am I? I think I'm Beth Dixon. And now I probably should have known this ahead of time as I'm trying to but okay. Yes, I am Beth Dixon .bks bsky.com. So if you are interested in following me on Twitter or not Twitter, Blue Sky instead of Twitter, Beth Dixon is what you're going to be looking for.
Also, if you want to follow my quasi drag house that made, like I
Ooh.
said, this jacket for me,
Yes,
hand
please.
painted corset as well.
Ooh.
So Ruby Key Design on Instagram.
Ruby Key. So KEY.
Like a key.
Okay, good. Very cool. Yes, please go and follow them as well. I want to thank everybody behind the scenes at RHAP. Obviously, we will be back very soon in the beginning of the year to be talking about all things drag race. It'll be me, Liana, and Amon once again. Hopefully, we can have Sugar Free on as a guest sometime in the season if you're interested.
Please. I got a sister on that season, so like let's bring it.
Let's go. So we will be you can hear from us soon enough there. Please subscribe on all different platforms to RHAP, especially the Drag Race feed where this does show up, even though it's not Drag Race. Make sure that you like and review if you would like in order to help our podcast continue to grow. And we hope that you all have a great end to your year. I know it's been a tough one, but happy holiday season. And I hope that, 2025 brings good things for all of us. Bye-bye.
Bye.